The world dissolved into light and noise, a cacophony of mechanical whirring, distant shouts, and the acrid scent of ozone. Alex's consciousness snapped back into place as he tumbled onto rough, gritty ground, his lungs searing with the first breath of dusty air. Above him, the sky was a featureless gray dome, lit by an artificial sun that cast no warmth. Around him, jagged rock formations rose like broken teeth, and the ground was littered with chunks of dull, metallic ore. This was the first floor of the Tower of Eternity, the tutorial quarry. He pushed himself up, his hands scraping against the coarse sand. A dull ache throbbed in his temples, the remnants of the tower's summoning process. Other figures were materializing nearby, their forms shimmering into existence with flashes of blue light. Most wore expressions of awe or determination, their eyes scanning the horizon for monsters or challenges. Alex, however, felt only a familiar weight in his chest. He was a third-generation blacksmith from a fading family, and the tower had branded him as it did all newcomers, with a skill. A translucent screen flickered before his eyes, its text glowing with sterile white letters. Name, Alex. Race, human. Class, blacksmith. Skill, common blacksmithing. Rank, F. Description, allows basic smelting and forging of low-grade materials. Efficiency, 10%. Alex's jaw tightened. Common blacksmithing. The words felt like a slap. In his family's workshop back home, he dreamed of legendary crafts like Divine Artificer, or Master Forger, skills that could shape reality itself. Instead, he'd gotten this, a skill so mundane it was practically an insult. Around him, others were cheering or gasping as their own skills appeared. He overheard snippets, Fireball Initiate. Yes. Swift Strike, perfect for climbing. A burly man nearby laughed, flexing muscles enhanced by Berserker's might. No one paid Alex any mind. Why would they? In the tower, where floors offered infinite trials and rankings determined glory, a blacksmith with a common skill was background noise at best, a burden at worst. He'd heard the stories, climbers who soared to the upper floors, gaining power and prestige, while those with useless skills were left behind, forgotten in the lower levels. It seemed the tower had already decided his fate. A booming voice echoed across the quarry, emanating from nowhere and everywhere at once. Welcome, aspirants, to the Tower of Eternity. This is the tutorial's first floor, a proving ground for your potential. Complete your assigned tasks to earn points and advance. Fail, and you may remain here indefinitely. The voice faded, replaced by individual notifications. Alex's screen updated. Task, smelt 100 units of iron ore at the central furnace. Reward, 10 points. Time limit, 24 hours, ***. Smelt ore. Of course. While others would be fighting weak slimes or solving puzzles, he was stuck with manual labor. He sighed, his shoulders slumping. This was worse than he'd imagined. He'd hoped for a chance to prove himself, but the tower had dumped him into what felt like a glorified mining camp. He trudged toward the center of the quarry, where a massive, rusted furnace belched black smoke into the artificial sky. The ground was uneven, strewn with discarded tools, broken shovels, chipped hammers, and piles of rusty scrap. Other newcomers were already gathering, some looking confused, others annoyed. A group of 3 climbers, clad in leather armor and wielding crude swords, sneered as they passed him. Look at this one of them, a lanky youth with a sneer, said. A blacksmith? What's he gonna do, polish our boots? His companion, a woman with sharp eyes, chuckled. Probably here to smelt or for the real climbers. Pathetic. Alex kept his head down, his cheeks burning. He'd endured mockery before, back home when his family's forge struggled to compete with enchanted items from the tower. But here, in this place of endless possibility, it stung more deeply. He reached the furnace, where an NPC overseer, a grizzled man with a permanent scowl, handed him a rusty bucket and pointed to a pile of raw iron ore nearby. Get to work, the overseer grunted. No slacking. The tower doesn't tolerate laziness. Alex nodded mutely, hefting the bucket. It was heavier than it looked, the metal biting into his palms. For hours, he labored, hauling ore to the furnace, shoveling it into the blazing maw, and watching as the crude metal melted into sluggish, glowing pools. Sweat soaked his simple tunic, and his muscles ached with a fatigue that felt soul-deep. Around him, other climbers completed their tasks with relative ease, a few fought off rock golems that spawned intermittently, others repaired simple structures. He saw one man with basic alchemy, brewing potions from quarry herbs, earning admiring glances. No one looked at Alex. He was invisible, just another cog in the tower's machine. As the artificial sun began to dim, signaling the end of the first day, he'd smelted only 30 units. His hands were blistered, his back a knot of pain. The overseer barked at him to hurry up, but Alex's movements grew slower, weighed down by despair. He stumbled away from the furnace during a brief break, seeking a moment of solitude. He found a secluded nook behind a pile of discarded tools, where the noise of the quarry faded to a dull rumble. Sitting on a rough rock, he buried his face in his hands. What was the point? He'd be stuck here forever, smelting or while others climbed to greatness. His family's legacy, a line of blacksmiths who'd once crafted weapons for heroes, would end with him, a failure in a tutorial quarry. His eyes fell on a tool lying in the dirt, a rusty pickaxe, its handle splintered and its head caked with grime. It was the epitome of uselessness, tossed aside by some climber who'd upgraded to better gear. A symbol of his own situation. In a surge of bitter frustration, Alex grabbed it. His skill, common blacksmithing, hummed in his mind, a faint, almost imperceptible pulse. It was designed for smelting and basic repairs, but in this moment, he didn't care. He just wanted to do something, anything, that felt meaningful. Fine, he muttered to himself, his voice hoarse. If I'm gonna be stuck here, let's see what this pathetic skill can really do. He focused on the pickaxe, channeling his will into the skill. In his family's forge, he'd learned to visualize the metal, to feel its flaws and potential. Now, he imagined the rust flaking away, the metal growing stronger, sharper. He poured his frustration into that image, the years of being overlooked, the weight of expectations, the crushing disappointment of this place. The skill activated with a soft glow, a pale blue light that enveloped the pickaxe. At first, nothing happened. Alex almost laughed at himself. What had he expected? A miracle? But then, the glow intensified, brightening from blue to a brilliant, blinding gold. The pickaxe trembled in his hands, the rust dissolving into motes of light. The splintered handle smoothed out, the wood darkening to a rich, polished ebony. The metal head reshaped itself, growing larger, sharper, with intricate runes etching themselves across its surface. A low hum filled the air, vibrating through Alex's bones. He stared, his breath catching. This wasn't common blacksmithing. This was something else entirely. The transformation took only seconds, but it felt like an eternity. When the light faded, he was holding not a rusty pickaxe, but a weapon of breathtaking beauty. The head gleamed with a silvery sheen, shot through with veins of adamantine that glittered in the dim light. The runes pulsed with a soft, earthy power. A notification flashed before his eyes, the text glowing with an urgency he'd never seen. Item upgraded, adamantine pickaxe of earth sundering. Grade, mythic. Effects, plus 500% mining speed, ignores hardness of all materials below tier 5, generates tremors on strike, durability infinite. Skill used, absolute upgrade. Error, skill mismatch detected. Alex's heart hammered against his ribs. Absolute upgrade. The words echoed in his mind, laden with meaning he couldn't yet grasp. He'd heard whispers of such skills, legendary abilities lost to time, said to break the very rules of the tower. And it was his. But the system had branded him with common blacksmithing. Was this a mistake? A glitch? He hefted the pickaxe. It was weightless in his hands, yet he could feel its immense power thrumming through the handle. On impulse, he swung it lightly at a nearby boulder. The pickaxe touched the stone, and with a sound like cracking thunder, the boulder split cleanly in two, the halves crumbling to dust. No resistance, no effort. Alex staggered back, his mind reeling. This changed everything. He wasn't a failure. He wasn't stuck. He had a skill that could turn trash into treasure, that could defy the tower's limitations. A wild hope surged in his chest, tempered by confusion. Why had the system given him common blacksmithing, if this was his true skill? And what did error, skill mismatch detected, mean? As he stood there, clutching the mythic pickaxe, the notification lingered, flickering ominously. The artificial sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the quarry. In the distance, the overseer shouted for workers to return to their posts. Alex's thoughts raced. He had power now, incredible, impossible power. But with it came questions, and a creeping sense that he'd just drawn attention to himself in a way he couldn't yet understand. He hid the pickaxe under his tunic, its cool metal pressed against his skin. For the first time since arriving, he didn't feel despair. He felt a spark of something dangerous and new, possibility. But as he walked back toward the furnace, the error message burned in his vision, a silent warning that his journey had just taken a turn into uncharted territory. The morning sun cast long shadows across the quarry floor, painting the gray stone in hues of gold and rust. Alex stood in the same spot where he discovered the truth about his skill, the adamantine pickaxe of earth sundering leaning against a boulder beside him. Its surface gleamed with an inner light, veins of silver and deep blue running through the metal like frozen lightning. He hadn't slept. How could he, when the world had just turned upside down? He stared at his hands, calloused and stained with dust. Yesterday, they were the hands of a failure. Today, they held the power to reshape reality itself. The system notification still burned in his memory: error, skill mismatch detected. True skill identified, absolute upgrade, legendary. The words had flashed in his vision for only a moment before vanishing, leaving behind a strange, pulsing awareness in his mind. He could feel the skill now, not as a simple blacksmithing technique, but as a living thing, a river of potential waiting to be unleashed. Absolute upgrade, he whispered to the empty air. The quarry was quiet at this hour, most of the other workers still in their makeshift barracks, dreading another day of backbreaking labor. Alex had slipped out before dawn, driven by a feverish need to understand. He'd brought with him the only other tool he owned, a broken shovel, its wooden handle splintered and its metal head rusted through in places. It was the kind of thing the overseers handed out to new arrivals, meant to be used until it fell apart and then discarded. He knelt in the dust, placing the shovel on the ground before him. Taking a deep breath, he focused on the skill. It wasn't like before, when he'd activated common blacksmithing, out of sheer frustration. Now, he could sense the pathways of energy within him, a network of light that connected to the very fabric of the tower. He reached out with his will, touching the shovel. Upgrade, he said, the word carrying a weight he hadn't expected. The air shimmered around the tool. A soft, golden glow enveloped it, starting at the rusted metal and spreading along the broken wood. Alex watched, his heart hammering against his ribs. The rust flaked away, not just cleaning the surface but transforming it. The metal darkened, then brightened into a polished, mirror-like finish that reflected the dawn sky. The wood of the handle knit itself back together, the grain shifting and strengthening until it was smooth as ivory, with faint, glowing runes etched along its length. The glow intensified, and Alex had to shield his eyes. When it faded, the shovel was gone. In its place lay something entirely new, a spade of impossible craftsmanship. Its head was forged from a metal that seemed to shift between colors, deep earth brown, shimmering silver, and hints of emerald green. The handle was now a single piece of polished obsidian, warm to the touch and humming with energy. Above it, a system notification appeared in his vision, clear and undeniable. Item upgraded, broken shovel mythic spade of infinite digging. Effects, can dig through any earth or stone without wear. Grants minor earth manipulation abilities to wielder. Durability, infinite. Alex reached out, his fingers trembling as they closed around the obsidian handle. The moment he touched it, he felt a connection, a thrum of power that resonated with the very ground beneath his feet. He lifted the spade, and it felt weightless, perfectly balanced. On impulse, he drove it into the hard-packed quarry floor. Instead of the usual jarring impact, the spade slid through the stone as if it were water, leaving a clean, smooth cut behind. A few pebbles rose from the earth, hovering in the air at his command before dropping back down. Infinite, he breathed, the word tasting like hope. He'd done it again. This wasn't a fluke or a one-time mistake. His skill, absolute upgrade, really could enhance anything, turning trash into treasure. The implications crashed over him like a wave. He could upgrade tools, weapons, armor, anything. And if the descriptions were true, these items weren't just better, they were mythic, legendary, things that belonged in the hands of heroes on the highest floors, not in a dusty tutorial quarry. A laugh bubbled up in his throat, half hysterical. All his life, he'd been told he was worthless. A third-generation blacksmith who couldn't even craft a decent dagger. His family's forge had been a place of disappointment, his father's sighs louder than the hammer strikes. When the Tower of Eternity descended and branded him with common blacksmithing, it felt like the final verdict. But now he had this. A power that broke all the rules. He spent the next few hours experimenting, his earlier despair replaced by a giddy, focused energy. He found a discarded leather glove, torn and stained. With a thought, he upgraded it into a gauntlet of the steady hand, its leather now supple and strong, with silver threads that enhanced grip and precision. A chipped stone became a focusing gem of clarity, smoothing his thoughts and sharpening his senses. Each upgrade cost him nothing but a slight drain of stamina, a faint tiredness that was easily ignored in the face of creation. By mid-morning, he had a small collection of items laid out beside him: the pickaxe, the spade, the gauntlet, the gem, and a few others. A rusted bucket turned into a vessel of eternal cleanliness, a cracked whetstone into a sharpening stone of perfection. They glowed with inner light, humming with power that made the air around them vibrate. Alex sat back, wiping sweat from his brow. He was rich. Not in coins, but in potential. And potential, in the tower, was everything. It was then that he heard the footsteps. Slow, shuffling, accompanied by the tap of a cane on stone. Alex looked up to see old man Grint approaching from the direction of the quarry's only shop. Grint was a fixture of the first floor, a grizzled, stooped figure with a beard like tangled wire and eyes that missed nothing. He ran a small stall that sold basic supplies to the workers: cheap tools, bland food, and the occasional low-grade health potion. Most climbers ignored him, seeing the tutorial floor as a stepping stone to be left behind as quickly as possible. But Grint's eyes weren't on Alex. They were fixed on the adamantine pickaxe, leaning against the boulder. The old man stopped a few feet away, his gaze traveling over the pickaxe's gleaming surface, the intricate patterns in the metal, the way it seemed to pull the light toward it. He didn't speak for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "That's quite a tool you've got there, boy," Grint said at last, his voice a dry rasp like grinding stones. He leaned on his cane, his eyes narrowing. Didn't know they handed out mythic-grade equipment to quarry workers. Alex's heart skipped a beat. He hadn't considered being seen. In his excitement, he'd forgotten that the quarry wasn't entirely deserted. He scrambled to his feet, trying to look casual. "It's something I found," he said, the lie clumsy on his tongue. Grint snorted. "Found? In this dump? Boy, I've been on this floor for 20 years. The only thing you find here is more rocks and the occasional rat. That pickaxe didn't come from the tower's loot tables. I'd know, I've seen them all." He took a step closer, his eyes flicking to the other items on the ground. The mythic spade, the gauntlet, the gem. His breath caught. "By the founders, you made these, didn't you?" There was no point in denying it. The shock and awe in Grint's eyes told Alex that the old man understood exactly what he was looking at. Slowly, Alex nodded. "My skill, it's not what I thought it was. I'll say," Grint muttered. He reached out, but stopped short of touching the pickaxe, as if afraid it might burn him. "That's adamantine. And not just any adamantine, it's been infused with earth-sundering properties. I haven't seen work like this since never. Not on the first floor." He turned his sharp gaze back to Alex. "What's your skill really called, boy? And don't give me that common blacksmithing nonsense." Alex hesitated. Trust was a rare commodity in the tower, especially for someone branded a failure. But Grint had been kind in his own way, never mocking him like the other climbers, sometimes slipping him an extra loaf of bread when rations were short. And more than that, Alex saw something in the old man's eyes, not greed, but a deep, weary curiosity. "It's called Absolute Upgrade," Alex said softly. "The system says it's legendary. And it lets me upgrade anything. Infinitely." Grint's eyes widened. For a moment, he looked like he'd been struck. Then he let out a low whistle. "Absolute upgrade. I've heard stories. Myths, really. They say it was a skill created by the tower's architects, then sealed away because it broke the economy. Too much power in one place." He shook his head, a strange smile touching his lips. "And it landed in the hands of a kid stuck on the tutorial floor. The irony." He knelt down, his joints creaking, and examined the mythic spade. His fingers traced the runes on the handle, and he nodded to himself. Infinite digging. Nowhere. Earth manipulation. This is impossible. But here it is." He looked up at Alex. "You realize what you have, don't you? You could turn this entire quarry into a treasure trove. You could make the junk they throw away here worth more than the legendary weapons on floor 50. "I know," Alex said, the words filled with a mix of pride and fear. "But what do I do with it? I'm still stuck here. The overseers won't let me leave until I've contributed enough by smelting ore." Grint stood up slowly, his eyes thoughtful. That's where I come in, boy. You see, I run a shop. A poor one, but it's mine. And I have connections. Traders who pass through the lower floors, climbers looking for bargains. He gestured to the items. Sell these through me. Let me be your distributor. I'll handle the sales, take a small cut, and you get the coin. With enough coin, you can buy your way out of here, or better yet, buy the materials to upgrade even more. Alex's mind raced. It made sense. He couldn't exactly walk up to the overseers with a mythic pickaxe and demand freedom. But coin was a language everyone in the tower understood. And if he could sell these items, he could build a foundation. A way out of the quarry, and maybe even a way to change his fate. What would you offer? Alex asked, trying to sound businesslike. He'd never negotiated a sale before, his family's forge had always dealt in simple repairs, not legendary artifacts. Grint picked up the adamantine pickaxe, hefting it with surprising strength for his age. For this? I've got a buyer in mind. A miner on floor 3 who's been looking for a decent tool for years. He's got deep pockets. I could get you 50 gold coins for it. Maybe more. 50 gold coins. Alex's breath caught. That was more than he'd ever seen in his life. On the first floor, workers were paid in copper, if they were paid at all. With 50 gold, he could buy a small fortune in supplies, or even bribe an overseer to look the other way. And for the others? Alex asked, his voice barely a whisper. We'll figure it out, Grint said, his eyes gleaming. But the pickaxe is the start. Do we have a deal? Alex looked at the pickaxe, then at Grint's outstretched hand. This was it, the first step into a new world. A world where he wasn't a failure, but a creator. He took Grint's hand, the grip firm and calloused. Deal. Grint grinned, a genuine smile that cracked his weathered face. Good. I'll take the pickaxe now, start the negotiations. You keep the rest, but be careful. Don't go showing these off to everyone. Word travels fast in the tower, and not all of it is friendly. He slung the pickaxe over his shoulder, its weight seeming insignificant to him. As he turned to leave, he paused, looking back at Alex with a sudden seriousness. One more thing, boy, Grint said, his voice dropping low. What you're doing, it's going to change things. This floor, the economy, maybe even the tower itself. And change attracts attention. The kind of attention from higher floors that you don't want. Climbers with more power than sense, guilds that think they own everything. They see a nobody on the tutorial floor with gear like this, and they'll come knocking. Not to trade. To take. He met Alex's eyes, and for the first time, Alex saw real worry there. So you keep your head down. You upgrade in secret. And you trust no one but me. Because once they realize what you can do, this quiet little quarry won't be quiet for long. With that, Grint shuffled away, the adamantine pickaxe gleaming on his back like a beacon. Alex watched him go, the old man's warning echoing in his mind. Unwanted attention. Higher floors. He looked down at his hands, at the mythic spade still resting on the ground. He had power now, but power came with a price. And somewhere, in the heights of the tower, forces were stirring that would soon look down and see the light he'd ignited in the dust. The sun climbed higher, but Alex felt a chill that had nothing to do with the morning air. He had his first sale. He had a partner. And he had a warning. The game was changing, and he was right at the center of it. The quarry's dawn arrived not with birdsong, but with the rhythmic clang of metal on stone. Alex stood before his makeshift forge, a hollowed-out section of the quarry wall where he'd arranged a furnace cobbled together from discarded iron plates and a bellows made from a torn leather sack. His hands, calloused from weeks of smelting ore, now moved with a new purpose. Spread before him was a collection of what the other workers called quarry trash, broken pickaxes with splintered handles, chipped shovels, rusted hammers, and even a few bent crowbars. He picked up a particularly sad-looking hammer. Its head was cracked, and the wooden handle was split down the middle. Under normal circumstances, it would have been tossed into the scrap heap to be melted down for basic iron ingots. But to Alex it was raw potential. Closing his eyes, he focused on the skill that hummed in his mind like a hidden engine. Common blacksmithing, the label was a lie, a glitch in the tower's system. What he truly possessed was absolute upgrade, though the system still refused to acknowledge it properly. He activated it, feeling a surge of energy flow from his core into the hammer. The air around the tool shimmered. The rust flaked away like dried mud. The crack in the head sealed itself with a soft golden light, the metal darkening to a deep, volcanic black. The split handle knitted together, the wood transforming into polished ebony with silver veins running through it. A soft chime echoed in Alex's mind, and a notification flickered before his eyes, visible only to him. Item upgraded, broken hammer, volcanic maul of shattering, mythic grade. Effect, strikes cause minor seismic tremors. Durability, infinite, ***. Alex exhaled, a smile touching his lips. This was the 5th item he'd upgraded this morning. After his deal with Old Man Grint, he'd spent the night in a feverish rush, experimenting. He'd learned that, absolute upgrade, had no cooldown, no mana cost, it was limited only by his concentration and the base material. The more he used it, the more intuitive it became. He could sense the potential in items, like a faint glow only he could see. Quarry trash glowed the brightest, as if the system had never expected anyone to bother with such worthless things. Another one for the pile, he muttered to himself, placing them all beside 4 other upgraded tools, a pickaxe that gleamed like crystallized moonlight, a shovel with a blade that seemed to drink the light, a pair of tongs that radiated gentle heat, and a chisel that hummed with sharpness. Each was mythic grade, items that should only appear on floors beyond the 50th, not in this dusty tutorial quarry. His thoughts drifted to Grint. The old shopkeeper had taken the adamantine pickaxe yesterday, his eyes wide with a mix of greed and fear. 50 gold for this, lad, Grint had said, his voice hushed. But mark my words, you keep this quiet. The vultures on the higher floors have noses for treasure. They'll strip this place bare if they catch wind. Alex had agreed, but in his heart, he knew secrecy was a temporary shield. The quarry was too small, the workers too many. Word would spread. And spread it did. By mid-morning, the first-floor economy was undergoing a quiet revolution. Grint had set up a discreet stall at the edge of the quarry, away from the main thoroughfare where new climbers arrived. He didn't advertise the mythic items openly, instead, he offered them to trusted workers, those who'd been stuck on the first floor for months, their hopes of climbing dashed by weak skills or bad luck. Big Tom was the first buyer. A burly man with a perpetual scowl, he'd been mining the same ore vein for 6 weeks with a dull pickaxe. Grint showed him the crystalline pickaxe of Lunar Pierce, one of Alex's earlier upgrades. Tom's eyes bulged. How much, he grunted. For you, Tom. 10 silver, Grint said, a twinkle in his eye. It was a pittance for a mythic item, but Grint was playing the long game. Tom paid without hesitation, hefting the pickaxe. That afternoon, he cleared his ore vein in an hour, the crystal blade slicing through rock like butter. Other workers noticed. Whispers began to snake through the quarry. Alex watched from his forge, a strange pride swelling in his chest. These people, the failures, the discarded, were getting a taste of power. He saw a woman named Lyra, who'd been struggling with a bent shovel, now digging with the void-touched spade of earth swallowing. She moved with a newfound confidence, the shovel's blade seeming to dissolve stone on contact. The quarry's productivity soared. Piles of high-quality ore grew where before there had been trickles. The air, once thick with despair, now crackled with a low, eager energy. Grint visited Alex as the sun climbed higher. The old man's pockets jingled with coin. Sold 3 more, he said, keeping his voice low. That's 80 gold total, lad. I've got buyers lined up from floor 3 and 4, traders who think they're getting black market deals. They don't know the source. He handed Alex a small pouch. Your cut. 40 gold. Don't spend it all at once. Alex took the pouch, the weight of the coins feeling surreal. 40 gold. On the first floor, that was a fortune. Most workers earned a few copper a day. He tucked it into his worn belt, his mind racing. With this, he could buy better materials, maybe even rent a proper workshop. But Grint's next words sobered him. The economy's shifting, Grint said, scratching his beard. Prices for basic ore are dropping because we're producing too much, too fast. But the demand for specialty tools is soaring. I've had to turn away a few curious climbers from floor 2. They're starting to ask questions. Alex nodded, his earlier pride tinged with anxiety. He was breaking the game's economy, just as the outline of his skill suggested. The tower was built on scarcity, weak items on low floors, powerful ones on high floors. By flooding the first floor with mythic gear, he was creating inflation in reverse. Common weapons were becoming worthless compared to his upgraded trash. He could see it in the workers' eyes, they looked at their old tools with disdain now. As afternoon shadows lengthened, the inevitable arrived. A group of 5 climbers descended the stone ramp from the upper floors. They moved with the swagger of veterans, their armor gleaming with enchantments, silver plate etched with glowing runes, cloaks that shimmered in the light. They were from floor 5, a mid-tier floor where monsters dropped rare materials and skills began to differentiate. Their leader, a man with a scar across his cheek and a sword at his hip, sneered at the quarry workers. "Look at these noobs," he said, his voice carrying across the dusty ground. "Still breaking their backs on rock. Don't they know there's real glory up above?" His companions laughed. One, a woman with a bow, nudged a pile of ore with her boot. "Pathetic. This floor is a waste of space." The workers tensed. Big Tom, who was taking a break with his new pickaxe, glared at them. "We're doing our part," he growled. The scarred leader, whose name tag floated above his head as Darien, Floor 5 Vanguard, stepped forward. "Your part. Your part is to supply ore for real climbers. Now, we're here to collect the tax. Heard you've been producing extra. Hand over 20% of your daily haul, and we won't make this unpleasant." It was a common bullying tactic, higher floor climbers extorting resources from lower floors, exploiting the tower's loose rules on tutorial zones. The workers shuffled nervously. But then, Lyra stood up, her void-touched shovel in hand. "We're not giving you anything," she said, her voice steady. Darien's eyes narrowed. He drew his sword, a frost blade of the glacial wastes, a rare-grade weapon that emitted a cold mist. "You dare defy us? I'll shatter that toy shovel of yours." He lunged, aiming not at Lyra but at her shovel, intending to break it as a show of force. The blade struck the shovel's blade with a sound like a bell being rung. And shattered. The frost blade exploded into a shower of icy fragments. Darien stumbled back, his hand bleeding from the recoil, his eyes wide with disbelief. His companions froze. The shovel hadn't even scratched, it absorbed the impact, the void-black metal seeming to drink the cold energy. What is that?" Darien stammered. Lyra hefted the shovel, a fierce grin on her face. "An upgrade." Chaos erupted. Darien's companions drew their weapons, another sword, a mace, 2 daggers, all rare or uncommon grade. They attacked, aiming at the workers who now stood with their upgraded tools. Big Tom swung his crystalline pickaxe, parrying a sword strike and sending cracks through the blade. Another worker with the volcanic maul slammed it into the ground, causing a tremor that knocked the bow woman off her feet. The climbers were outmatched. Their weapons, prized possessions from floor 5, chipped, cracked, or broke outright against the mythic-grade quarry trash. Within minutes, they were disarmed, bruised, and staring in horror at the workers who surrounded them with tools that glowed with impossible power. Darien, clutching his injured hand, glared at the crowd. "This isn't over," he spat. "You think you can defy the Crimson Blades? Our guild master will hear of this. He'll crush this floor into dust." He turned, signaling his companions to retreat. They scrambled up the ramp, casting fearful glances back at the workers now standing tall, their cheap gear radiating an aura of invincibility. Alex watched from the shadows of his forge, his heart pounding. This was the attention Grint had warned about. The climbers hadn't discovered him directly, but they'd seen the results of his work. And they were reporting to their guild master. As the sun dipped below the quarry's rim, casting long shadows, Alex looked at his hands. They were stained with soot and dust, but they held power. He had started something he couldn't stop. The first floor economy was booming, but a storm was brewing on the higher floors. He glanced at the pile of upgraded tools, then at the workers who were now celebrating their small victory, their laughter echoing off the stone walls. He had given them strength, but he had also painted a target on their backs. And somewhere on floor 5, a guild master was now hearing about a tutorial floor armed with weapons that shattered frost blades. The cliffhanger of his life was tightening its grip. Quietly, Alex began upgrading another broken tool, a simple iron wedge. As the energy flowed, he wondered not if the guild would come, but when, and how he would meet them with nothing but quarry trash and a skill that broke all the rules. The sun hung low over the quarry, casting long shadows across the jagged landscape where the first floor of the Tower of Eternity sprawled like a forgotten scar. For days, the air had buzzed with a new energy, a current of excitement that hummed beneath the usual clang of hammers and the steady rhythm of pickaxes striking stone. Alex stood at the edge of a makeshift workshop he'd carved into the side of a rocky outcrop, his hands calloused and stained with ore dust. Around him, piles of what had once been discarded junk, broken shovels, cracked buckets, rusted nails, now gleamed with an otherworldly sheen, transformed by his touch into artifacts that defied the tower's logic. He ran his fingers over the surface of a newly upgraded hammer, its handle now woven with threads of starlight and its head humming with latent power. It had started as a simple tool, chipped and worn from years of labor, but under the influence of absolute upgrade, it had become the celestial mallet of unyielding force. Alex marveled at it, not with pride, but with a quiet sense of dread. Every enhancement felt like a step further into a game he hadn't meant to play, a system he was unwittingly unraveling. Old Man Grint's shop, a ramshackle hut at the quarry's entrance, had become the epicenter of this quiet revolution. Workers who'd once toiled in obscurity now moved with a newfound confidence, their enhanced tools making light work of tasks that had once broken their spirits. Lyra, the young woman with the void-touched shovel, had become something of a local legend, her digs uncovering veins of rare ore that had lain hidden for centuries. The economy of the first floor, once a stagnant pool of meager trades, now flowed with a vitality that drew whispers from the higher floors. It was into this transformed landscape that Kale, master of the Crimson Blades, descended. He arrived not with the fanfare of a conquering hero, but with the silent menace of a predator stalking its prey. Kale was a man carved from the same stone as the tower itself, tall, broad-shouldered, with eyes the color of cold steel and a demeanor that spoke of countless battles won through sheer force of will. He wore armor of polished obsidian, etched with runes that glowed with a faint crimson light, and at his hip hung a sword said to have been forged in the fires of Floor 20. Behind him trailed a retinue of guild members, their expressions a mix of curiosity and contempt as they took in the humble surroundings of the tutorial floor. Kale's gaze swept over the quarry, lingering on the workers who paused in their labors to watch his approach. He saw the tools in their hands, the shimmering pickaxes, the glowing shovels, the hammers that seemed to pulse with energy, and his lips curled into a thin, calculating smile. This was no mere anomaly, this was a treasure trove, a source of power that could elevate the Crimson Blades to unprecedented heights. And he intended to claim it. He found Alex in his workshop, bent over a pile of scrap metal, his brow furrowed in concentration. Kale's shadow fell across the young blacksmith, and Alex looked up, his heart skipping a beat. There was no mistaking the aura of authority that radiated from the guild master, nor the cold appraisal in his eyes. So, Kale said, his voice a low rumble that seemed to vibrate through the very rock beneath their feet. "You're the one causing all the fuss." Alex straightened, wiping his hands on his leather apron. He felt a surge of fear, cold and sharp, but he forced it down, meeting Kale's gaze with a steadiness he didn't fully feel. "I'm just a blacksmith," he said, his voice calm. "Trying to make the best of what I've got." Kale chuckled, a sound devoid of warmth. "A blacksmith with a skill that turns trash into treasure. Don't play coy with me, boy. I've seen the items coming out of this quarry. They shouldn't exist on the first floor. They shouldn't exist at all." He took a step closer, his armor clinking softly. "My man Darian came back from here with his tail between his legs, his prized sword shattered by a common shovel. He told me stories of workers wielding gear that outclassed anything we've looted from the upper floors. And I followed the trail right to you." Alex's mind raced. He'd known this moment would come, Grint had warned him, but facing it was another matter entirely. He could see the greed in Kale's eyes, the hunger for power that drove men like him to climb the tower, crushing anyone in their path. "What do you want?" Alex asked, keeping his tone neutral. "I want you," Kale said simply. "Join the Crimson Blades. Your skill, this absolute upgrade, or whatever it is, will be a guild asset. We'll provide you with materials, protection, a share of the spoils. You'll never have to smelt or in this dump again." For a moment, Alex was tempted. The offer was seductive, a way out of the quarry, a chance to be something more than a failure branded with a common skill. But then he thought of the workers, of Lyra and Grint and the others who'd found a measure of dignity in the tools he'd crafted. He thought of the system's unfairness, the way it discarded those it deemed unworthy. And he knew he couldn't trade their newfound strength for a gilded cage. "No," Alex said, the word firm and clear. "I'm not interested." Kale's smile vanished, replaced by a mask of icy rage. "You're refusing me," he said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Do you have any idea who I am? The Crimson Blades control floors 5 through 10. We have resources, influence, power you can't even imagine. And you, a nobody stuck on the tutorial floor, think you can say no? I do, Alex replied, his hands curling into fists at his sides. He could feel the energy of absolute upgrade humming in his veins, a constant reminder of the power he wielded, and the risk it carried. This isn't about you or your guild. It's about something bigger. Bigger? Kale scoffed. There is nothing bigger than strength in the tower. And you're about to learn that the hard way. He drew his sword, the blade gleaming with a malevolent light. If you won't join willingly, I'll take you by force. And I'll strip that skill from you one way or another. He lunged, his movement a blur of obsidian and crimson. Alex had no combat training, no enhanced stats to speak of, but he had his skill, and in that moment, it was all he needed. His eyes darted around the workshop, settling on a loose rock near his feet. It was just a stone, rough and unremarkable, but to Alex, it was a canvas. As Kale's sword descended, Alex reached out with his mind, channeling absolute upgrade into the rock. The world seemed to slow, the air thickening with energy. The stone glowed, its surface shifting and reforming, patterns of light etching themselves into its core. In an instant, it transformed, swelling in size and density, becoming a barrier stone of absolute defense. It rose from the ground, interposing itself between Alex and Kale's blade. The sword struck with a force that should have shattered mountains, but the barrier held, absorbing the impact with a resonant hum that echoed through the quarry. Cracks spiderwebbed across Kale's blade, and he staggered back, his eyes wide with shock. What in the abyss, he breathed, staring at the barrier stone, which now pulsed with a soft, steady light, forming an impenetrable dome around Alex. Inside the barrier, Alex leaned against the rocky wall of his workshop, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The upgrade had drained him, a wave of exhaustion washing over him, but he forced himself to stand tall. He met Kale's furious gaze through the shimmering energy of the barrier. I told you no, he said, his voice stronger now, edged with defiance. This is my floor. These are my people. And I won't let you take what we've built. Kale's face twisted with rage. He struck the barrier again and again, his blows ringing against the stone, but it held firm, unyielding. Around them, the workers had gathered, their enhanced tools in hand, their expressions grim. Lyra stood at the forefront, her void-touched shovel held ready, its dark energy swirling ominously. You think this changes anything? Kale snarled, sheathing his damaged sword. This is just a delay. I'll be back, and I won't come alone. The entire Crimson Blades will descend on this pathetic quarry, and will crush you, your barrier, and every last one of these insects. He turned to his retinue, his voice booming across the landscape. Mark my words, this floor will burn. With a final, venomous glare at Alex, Kale turned and strode away, his guild members falling in behind him. The tension in the air didn't dissipate with his departure, if anything, it thickened, a storm gathering on the horizon. As the barrier stone's light faded, Alex sank to his knees, the adrenaline leaching from his body. Grint emerged from the crowd, his old face etched with concern. That was a brave stand, lad, he said, helping Alex to his feet. But Kale doesn't make idle threats. He'll return with an army. Alex nodded, his mind already racing ahead. He looked at the workers around him, at their determined faces, at the tools in their hands that he had crafted from nothing. They weren't just tools anymore, they were symbols of resistance, of a chance to fight back against a system that had written them off. Then we'll be ready, he said, his voice quiet but firm. We have the gear. We have the will. And we have something they don't, a reason to protect this place. He turned back to his workshop, to the piles of scrap waiting to be transformed. The fear was still there, a cold knot in his stomach, but it was joined now by a fierce resolve. Kale thought he could crush them, but Alex had broken the game's economy with a trash skill. He would break this too, if he had to. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of blood and gold, he began to plan, his hands already reaching for the next piece of junk, his skill humming with potential. The first floor would not fall without a fight. The dawn after Kale's retreat painted the quarry in hues of burnt orange and dusty gold. Alex stood at the edge of the smelting pit, the barrier stone of absolute defense, still humming faintly beside him like a loyal hound. His hands trembled, not from fear, but from the raw, untapped potential coursing through his veins. The Crimson Blades would return. He had maybe days, perhaps only hours. But time, he realized, was just another material to be shaped. First, he whispered to the empty air, his breath misting in the chill morning, I need to become more than just the hand that holds the hammer. He began with the scraps. The quarry was a graveyard of discarded tools, broken shovels with splintered handles, cracked anvils left to rust, coils of frayed rope, and piles of scrap metal for more processing. To anyone else, it was junk. To Alex, it was a pallet. He gathered an armful, a dented breastplate from some long-forgotten guard's training gear, links of a shattered chainmail shirt, strips of leather from worn-out aprons. He piled them before his personal anvil, a small, pitted thing he'd claimed on his first day. Closing his eyes, he focused on the skill within him. No longer did he see the bland label, Common Blacksmithing. In his mind's eye, it shimmered with hidden text, a system error made manifest, absolute upgrade. He placed a hand on the dented breastplate. Enhance. The world narrowed to the metal under his palm. He didn't just will it to be better, he poured intention into it. Not just harder, but resilient. Not just strong, but enduring. He imagined the metal remembering every blow it had ever taken and learning from them. A soft, silver-blue light emanated from his fingers, seeping into the steel. The dent smoothed out. The rust flaked away to reveal a surface that drank the dawn light and glowed with a faint inner warmth. The notification flashed in his vision, visible only to him. Scrap breastplate of Smith's endurance. Quality, mythic. Effect, grants wearer, Smith's resilience, gradually increases physical defense and stamina regeneration while crafting or fighting. Durability, infinite. Alex let out a shaky breath. Infinite durability. The concept was ludicrous, a joke told by the gods. Yet here it was. He strapped the breastplate on over his simple tunic. Immediately, a subtle warmth spread through his chest. The lingering ache from yesterday's confrontation with Kale faded. His breathing deepened. It was as if his very bones had been reinforced. Piece by piece, he worked. The chainmail links, when enhanced, wove themselves back together into a hauberk of unbreaking chains, light as silk but stopping a conceptual edge. The leather strips became greaves of the tireless dread, making his steps silent and sure. He forged gauntlets from the remains of a broken bellows, their final form the gauntlets of absolute grip, allowing him to hold anything with unshakable firmness. A discarded miner's helmet, its lamp long dead, transformed into the helm of the unyielding mind, sharpening his focus and shielding his thoughts from external pressure. The final piece was the most abstract. He took a simple, smooth river stone from the quarry floor, not a tool, not metal, just a rock. He held it in both hands, thinking not of armor, but of core, of center, of the unshakable heart of a forge that burns through the longest night. Enhance, he commanded, pouring the image of an immovable anvil, of bedrock, of the earth's patient strength into it. The stone dissolved in a flash of deep brown light, then reformed around his neck as a pendant, a simple, dark gray disc on a leather cord. Heartstone of the earth anvil. Quality, divine. Effect, anchors wearer's life force, significantly boosting vitality and providing minor damage reflection. Synergizes with Smith's resilience. When he donned the full set, it was not with the clank and rattle of plate armor. The God-forged armor, for that is what it had become, settled on him like a second skin. It was surprisingly light, moving with him, not against him. The metal had a lived-in, almost organic texture, like the bark of an ancient tree or the scales of a deep earth dragon. It didn't shine ostentatiously, it absorbed light and hummed with a low, potent energy. A status screen flickered briefly. Alex, Level 1, Tutorial locked. Primary skill, Absolute upgrade, Error class. New traits acquired. Smith's resilience, physical defense plus 300%, stamina regen plus 500% during activity. Earth Anvil's heart, max health plus 200%, 10% damage reflection. Unyielding focus, mental resistance to intimidation and fear effects. He was still, technically, a level 1 noob stuck on the tutorial floor. But wrapped in the silent power of his own making, he felt like a fortress. While Alex transformed himself, the world around him was changing faster. Old Man Grint's shop, Grint's Goods and Oddities, was no longer a dusty shack selling weak health potions and chipped iron daggers. It had become a bazaar. The news of mythic-grade trash had spread like wildfire through the lower floor's gossip networks. By mid-morning, a line stretched out the door and around the corner of the quarry's administrative hut. Traders from floors 2, 3, and even a daring few from floor 4 had used precious teleport scrolls to visit the once despised tutorial level. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of ozone from magical items and the buzz of frantic haggling. Grint, looking more flustered and alive than he had in decades, stood behind a counter now gleaming with polished wood instead of stained plank. No, no, I told the fellow with the feathered hat already. Grint barked at a sleek-haired trader from floor 3, who was waving a bulging coin purse. The infinite water skin is sold. Payment was 3 high-grade mana crystals and a map to a silver vein on floor 2. A steal for him, I tell you. On the shelves, the items glowed with soft, potent auras. A broom of ceaseless sweeping levitated slightly in its corner, dutifully keeping the floor spotless. A pot of ever-stewing stew burbled contentedly, filling the shop with a savory aroma that boosted morale. The star attractions were the tools, pickaxes of seismic revelation, that could find ore veins by sound, shovels that dug their own holes, and hammers that never missed the nail. This economy, muttered a grizzled trader from floor 2, clutching a newly purchased lantern of perpetual dawn, it's upside down. I traded a full set of rare-grade wolf pelts for this light. On any other floor, that'd be madness. Here. It feels like a bargain. Inflation had indeed hit the first floor, but it was a localized, bizarre inflation. Standard gold coins were becoming meaningless. Barter was king, with rare materials, information, and unique low-floor artifacts being the real currency. The quarry workers, once paid in meager copper for backbreaking labor, now strutted around with enhanced tools, trading favors and odd jobs for exotic goods from above. A new, chaotic ecosystem was blooming in the desolate quarry. Grint caught sight of Alex approaching through the crowd. The old shopkeeper's eyes widened slightly at the sight of the new, subtly powerful armor. He excused himself from a customer and shuffled over to a slightly quieter corner, pulling Alex with him. "Boy," Grint said, his voice low, "you look different. Solid." "Feel it," Alex said, his voice calm, carrying an unfamiliar steadiness. "How are we holding up?" "We're rich and we're doomed," Grint chuckled without humor. "The flow of goods is a torrent. I've got promises and favors owed from half the lower floors. But the attention." He nodded toward the window, where a group of climbers in matching blue tabards, a minor guild from floor 3, were examining a worker's reinforced wheelbarrow, with naked envy. "It's a feast, and every predator in the forest can smell it. Kale's not the only one with greedy eyes." "Let them look," Alex said, his hand resting on the heartstone pendant. "The crimson blades are the immediate threat." "Are the workers ready?" "As ready as folks with magical shovels can be," Grint shrugged. "Morale is high. They feel powerful for the first time. But they're not soldiers, Alex. They're miners, smelters, and drifters." "They won't need to be soldiers," Alex replied, his gaze drifting toward the quarry's high rim. "They just need to hold the line while I work." For the rest of the day, Alex trained. Not with swords or spells, he had none, but with his body and his new gear. He ran laps around the quarry perimeter, the greaves of the tireless tread, making his strides long and effortless, his stamina barely dipping thanks to Smith's resilience. He practiced lifting increasingly massive chunks of ore, the gauntlets of absolute grip, making the heaviest stone feel secure. He even asked a burly worker to strike his armored chest with a regular sledgehammer. The blow landed with a dull thud, the force dissipating across the breastplate of Smith's endurance, like a ripple in a pond. Alex didn't even stagger. As he trained, he planned. The quarry was a natural bowl. One main entrance road, steep walls elsewhere. Defensible, but a trap if surrounded. He needed more than just armored workers. He needed the very floor to fight for him. As twilight descended, painting the sky in purples and deep blues, Alex found a moment of quiet near the central smelter. He was about to experiment with upgrading a section of the ground when a prickling sensation crawled up his spine, a feeling of being watched that had nothing to do with the curious traders or admiring workers. It was cold, analytical, and utterly devoid of the greed or anger he'd felt from Kale. He turned slowly, scanning the high cliffs that ringed the quarry. At first, he saw nothing but shadows and rock. Then, his helm of the unyielding mind seemed to sharpen his vision slightly, filtering out the mundane. There, perched on a jagged outcrop nearly 100 feet up, was a silhouette. It was humanoid but indistinct, wrapped in shadows that seemed to drink the dying light. No glow of armor, no flash of a guild emblem. Just a still, dark shape. As Alex watched, the figure raised a hand. Not in greeting or threat, but in a slow, deliberate gesture. A faint, geometric pattern of pale blue light, like lines of system code, briefly flickered in the air before the figure before winking out. Then, the silhouette simply melted backward into the rock face, vanishing as if it had never been there. The message was clear. It wasn't Kale. It wasn't a greedy climber. Someone from the tower itself had just taken notice. The cliffhanger of the administration's gaze now fell over him, colder and more formidable than any guild's wrath. The battle for the first floor was no longer just about bullying climbers. The system itself had sent an observer. The real game was beginning. The dawn broke over the quarry with a tension that hung thicker than the morning mist. Alex stood at the edge of the smelting pits, his newly crafted, god-forged armor, gleaming dully in the pale light. It was a suit pieced together from scrap metal, rusted plates, broken chains, discarded gears, all transformed through absolute upgrade into something that felt alive against his skin. The armor hummed with latent energy, granting him Smith's resilience, plus 50% physical defense, plus 30% stamina regeneration. He flexed his fingers inside gauntlets that had once been mere leather scraps, now reinforced with mythic-grade alloys. Around him, the quarry workers gathered, their faces a mixture of fear and determination. Just days ago, they had been manual laborers, doomed to endless smelting under the tower's cruel tutorial system. Now, they clutched weapons that defied all logic, a shovel that glowed with earth-shattering power, a hammer that crackled with lightning, pickaxes that could pierce through solid rock as if it were paper. Alex had spent the night upgrading every tool he could find, turning the quarry's discarded junk into an arsenal that would make any climber from the upper floors weep with envy. Old Man Grint hobbled over, his usual gruff demeanor replaced by a grim seriousness. "They're coming," he said, his voice low. Scout spotted the crimson blades massing at the entrance portal. "Kale isn't taking any chances, he's brought his entire elite squad." Alex nodded, his heart pounding. The mysterious watcher from last night had vanished, but the memory of that flash of system code still chilled him. The administration was watching, and now Kale was here to crush them. "Did you distribute the gear?" he asked. Grint gestured to the workers. "Every last one. They're armed better than kings." "But Alex, these men aren't fighters. They're miners, smelters. Giving them god-tier weapons doesn't make them warriors." "They don't need to be," Alex replied, his voice steadying. "They just need to survive. And these tools, they'll do the fighting for them." He raised his voice, addressing the crowd. "Listen. The Crimson Blades think we're trash, stuck here on the first floor. They think they can walk in and take whatever they want. Today, we show them what happens when you underestimate the ones who forge the very ground you walk on." A ragged cheer went up, fueled by weeks of pent-up frustration. Alex could see the change in their eyes, the spark of defiance. He had given them more than weapons, he had given them hope. The invasion began not with a roar, but with a silent, deadly precision. One moment, the quarry was quiet, the next, figures in crimson armor materialized from the shadows, moving with the grace of predators. Kale led them, his own armor adorned with intricate engravings that marked him as a guild master from floor 10. He carried a sword that shimmered with a bloody light, the Blade of Crimson Dominion, a legendary weapon said to have slain 100 monsters. "Pathetic," Kale sneered, his voice echoing off the quarry walls. "You actually think these toys will stop us? I'll give you one last chance, Blacksmith. Join the Crimson Blades, hand over your crafting secrets, and I'll spare these worms." Alex stepped forward, the god-forged armor, clinking softly. "I told you before, Kale. I'm not joining anyone. And this floor isn't yours to take." Kale's smile was cold. "So be it." He raised his sword, and the elite climbers surged forward. The battle erupted in a chaos of clashing metal and flashing skills. A climber lunged at a worker with a dagger that trailed poison, only for the worker to block it with a mythic spade of infinite digging. The spade didn't just parry, it absorbed the blow and retaliated with a shockwave that sent the climber flying into a pile of ore. Another worker swung a thunderhammer of forged wrath, and lightning arced from its head, striking 3 climbers at once. Their armor, prized artifacts from higher floors, cracked under the impact. Alex moved through the fray, his mind racing. He wasn't a fighter by training, but the absolute upgrade had honed his instincts. He saw patterns in the chaos, a climber's overextension, a worker's hesitation. He ducked under a swing from a massive axe, then placed a hand on a nearby boulder. With a thought, he activated his skill. The boulder glowed, transforming into a barrier stone of absolute defense, rising to shield a group of workers from a volley of magical arrows. "He's enhancing the environment," shouted one of the climbers, panic in his voice. How is that possible? Kale watched, his expression darkening. He had expected resistance, but this was madness. Common tools were shattering legendary weapons. A shovel had just parried his lieutenant's, Frostbrand, without a scratch. The economy of power he understood, the higher the floor, the better the gear, was being turned upside down. Focus on the blacksmith. Kale roared. Take him down, and the rest will fall. Four elite climbers broke away, surrounding Alex. They moved in sync, their skills complementing each other, a fire mage, a wind blade user, a earth shaker, and a shadow assassin. Alex felt a surge of adrenaline. He couldn't outfight them, not with his limited combat experience. But he didn't need to. As the fire mage launched a searing bolt, Alex grabbed a broken cartwheel from the ground. Absolute upgrade, flared, and the wheel became a shield of eternal ember, absorbing the fire and reflecting it back. The wind blade user slashed, but Alex had already upgraded a piece of scrap metal into a gauntlet of gale deflection, redirecting the attack into the earth shaker. The assassin struck from behind, but the god-forged armor held the mythic-grade material, repelling the dagger with a resonant clang. Alex wasn't just defending, he was learning. Every upgrade, every clash, fed data into his mind. He could feel the absolute upgrade, adapting, growing more efficient. It was as if the skill itself was evolving. Kale laughed. In the tower, it's all a game. And you've been cheating. That skill of yours, it's not common blacksmithing, is it? I've had my scholars research it. Absolute upgrade, a legendary skill banned for breaking reality. No wonder the administrators are watching. Alex's blood ran cold. Kale knew. What do you want? I want what you have, Kale said, raising his sword. But since you won't give it willingly, I'll take it from your corpse. And to ensure you don't try any more tricks. He reached into his armor and pulled out a small, crystalline orb. It pulsed with a dull, gray light. Behold, the nullifier shard. A relic from the tower's early days, designed to counter system errors. It nullifies any active skill effects in its radius, including your upgrades. Alex stared at the orb, a cold dread settling in his stomach. He could feel it already, a subtle dampening in the air, a weakening of the energy that flowed through his crafted items. The god-forged armor still held, but its hum grew faint. Around them, the workers' weapons flickered, their enhanced properties fading. You see? Kale said, smiling. Without your cheat, you're just a failed blacksmith on the tutorial floor. Now, let's end this. He lunged, the blade of Crimson Dominion, aimed straight for Alex's heart. Alex raised his arms, but the armor felt heavier, less responsive. The sword struck, and for the first time, the mythic-grade metal groaned under the impact. A crack appeared on the breastplate. Alex stumbled back, his mind racing. The nullifier shard was canceling his upgrades, but only the active effects. The physical properties of the items, the base materials he had enhanced, might still remain. He had to think, to adapt. As Kale pressed the attack, Alex's eyes darted around, searching for anything he could use. The battle raged around them, but in this small circle, the rules had changed. Kale's sword came down again, and Alex barely dodged, the blade slicing through the air where his head had been. Running won't save you. Kale taunted. Your little rebellion ends here. Alex's hand brushed against the ground, feeling the rough stone of the quarry floor. An idea sparked, wild, desperate, but perhaps the only way. If the nullify a shard cancelled skill effects, maybe he could use something that wasn't a skill. Something inherent. He focused, not on upgrading, but on the memory of the absolute upgrade, the way it rewrote reality at a fundamental level. The skill was a system error, but it was also a part of him now. As Kale charged for the final blow, Alex didn't reach for an item. Instead, he reached deep within himself, to the core of what made absolute upgrade work. It wasn't just about enhancing objects, it was about understanding their potential, their true nature. His hand closed around a loose rock, not to upgrade it, but to feel its essence, the millennia of pressure that had formed it, the raw, unshaped power within. And in that moment, he didn't activate a skill. He simply willed the rock to be what it always could have been. The rock didn't glow. It didn't transform into a mythic artifact. Instead, it resonated, vibrating with a frequency that matched the quarry itself. Alex threw it, not at Kale, but at the ground between them. The impact was subtle, a deep, thrumming sound that spread through the stone. The nullifier shard, in Kale's hand flickered, its grey light wavering. For a second, the dampening field faltered. Alex didn't hesitate. He surged forward, his god-forged armor, regaining its hum, and slammed a gauntlet fist into Kale's chest. The guild master staggered, surprise flashing in his eyes. The nullifier shard fell from his hand, clattering to the ground. Around them, the workers' weapons flared back to life, their enhanced properties returning. The tide of battle shifted once more. Kale recovered quickly, his face contorted with rage. How? Alex stood tall, the crack in his armor a reminder of his vulnerability. You rely on artifacts to cancel skills, he said, his voice firm. I rely on understanding what I create. This floor, these tools, they're not just items. They're a part of this place. And you can't nullify a foundation. He picked up the nullifier shard, holding it up. It felt cold, inert now that it wasn't actively suppressing anything. Your secret weapon failed, Kale. Now, it's just you and me. But Kale's smile returned, twisted and confident. You think that's my only trick? The shard was just insurance. I didn't come here to fight fair. He raised his sword again, and this time, the crimson light intensified, swirling with dark energy. I came to show you what real power looks like. Let's see how your upgrades hold up against blood sacrifice, a skill that trades my own life force for unlimited power. The air grew heavy, and Kale's body began to glow with a sinister red aura. Alex braced himself, knowing the true battle was just beginning. The nullifier shard pulsed with a sickly violet light in Kale's hand, its energy washing over Alex like a physical weight. Around them, the battle between the Crimson Blades and Quarry workers had reached a fever pitch, clangs of enhanced tools against shattered legendary weapons, shouts of confusion from elite climbers who'd never imagined being outmatched by tutorial trash. But in this small circle of relative calm, Alex felt his connection to absolute upgrade, fraying at the edges. See? Kale sneered, his face pale from the blood sacrifice, skills drained but eyes burning with triumph. Your little cheat has limits. The nullifier shard was forged in the depths of floor 47, designed to counter exactly this kind of system-breaking nonsense. He took a step forward, the shard's glow intensifying. Now hand over your crafting secrets, or I'll reduce you to a smudge on this worthless rock. Alex's mind raced. The pickaxe in his hand, the very first, adamantine pickaxe of earth sundering, he'd created, felt heavier than usual. When he tried to activate absolute upgrade on it, the skill fizzled in his consciousness like a damp fuse. He could sense the potential within the tool, the infinite layers of enhancement waiting to be unlocked, but the shard's field was like a wall between him and that power. He glanced at the ground beneath his feet. The quarry floor was rough stone, scarred by centuries of mining, littered with discarded ore fragments and the occasional rusty tool. In his peripheral vision, he saw Old Man Grint watching from the doorway of his shop, face etched with worry. The workers, Jorn with his enhanced hammer, Lyra with her mythic-grade shovel, were holding their own against the Crimson Blades, but they kept glancing his way. They'd placed their trust in him, in the impossible gear he'd crafted from what others called trash. He couldn't fail them now. Your artifact cancels skills, Alex said, voice steady despite the adrenaline pounding in his veins. But it works on system-granted abilities, right? Things that interact with the tower's code. Kale's smirk faltered slightly. What of it? Absolute upgrade, might be a skill in name, Alex continued, dropping into a croucher and pressing his palm against the cold stone. But at its core, it's not about the system. It's about seeing potential where others see waste. It's about changing what something is. He focused not on the skill's interface, which was currently grayed out in his mental vision, but on the feeling of it. The memory of that first transformation, the rusty pickaxe becoming something glorious. The way the ore had sung to him when he smelted it. The quarry wasn't just a place of labor, it was a repository of latent power, waiting for someone to listen. What are you doing? Kale demanded, raising his sword, a gleaming, dragon-fang blade, that had cost a fortune on floor 12, but Alex ignored him. He poured his will into the ground. Not as a skill activation, but as an extension of his blacksmith's soul. He imagined the stone not as inert matter, but as clay to be shaped. He remembered the vibrations of the earth when he'd first connected with the quarry's essence to temporarily disrupt the shard earlier. That connection had been fleeting, instinctual. Now, he made it deliberate. The stone began to hum. A low, resonant frequency that made the air shimmer. Kale staggered back, the nullifier shard flickering. Impossible. The shard should block any. It's blocking the system, Alex interrupted, standing slowly. The ground around him was glowing with a soft, amber light, lines of energy spreading out like cracks in glass. But this? This is just me talking to the earth. He brought his foot down hard. The effect was instantaneous. A wave of force rippled outward from Alex, not as a skill-generated attack, but as a pure physical reaction, the ground itself rebelling. Stones leaped into the air. The crimson blades and workers alike stumbled, their battle grinding to a halt as everyone fought for balance. Kale cried out as the nullifier shard flew from his hand, its violet light snuffing out as it clattered against a rock. Tremor zone, Alex whispered, naming it as the system finally caught up, flashing a notification in his vision. Environmental upgrade achieved, Quarry floor tremor zone. Effect, disables artifact-based skill nullification within 50-meter radius. Ground instability increases by 300%. Kale scrambled for the shard, but Alex was faster. He snatched it up, feeling the cold, dead weight of it in his palm. For a moment, he considered upgrading it. What would a nullifier shard become with absolute upgrade applied, but he tossed it aside instead. It wasn't worth the risk, some things were better left broken. You monster, Kale spat, rising unsteadily. The blood sacrifice was taking its toll, veins stood out starkly on his neck, and his breath came in ragged gasps. Do you have any idea what you've done? The tower's balance. The tower's balance was already broken, Alex said, hefting his pickaxe. The connection to absolute upgrade flooded back, vibrant and eager. It favored people like you who could climb fast and crush others. I'm just adjusting the scales. He didn't give Kale time to respond. With a thought, he activated absolute upgrade on his pickaxe, not for a transformation, but for a momentary surge. The tool blazed with golden light, and Alex swung. It wasn't a graceful strike. Alex was no warrior, his form was that of a blacksmith putting force behind a hammer blow. But the power behind it was immense. Kale raised his dragonfang blade in a desperate parry, and the two weapons met with a sound like a thunderclap. The legendary sword, prized by the crimson blades, envied across lower floors, shattered. Shards of enchanted metal scattered across the trembling ground. Kale stared at the hilt in his hand, disbelief wiping the arrogance from his face. How? He breathed. Because I didn't upgrade my pickaxe to beat your sword, Alex said, lowering his tool. The glow faded, leaving it looking deceptively ordinary again. I upgraded it to beat any sword. Around them, the remaining crimson blades were surrendering. Disarmed and demoralized, they looked nothing like the elite climbers who'd swaggered into the quarry. Jorn had 3 of them lined up against a wall, his enhanced hammer resting casually on his shoulder. Lyra was helping a wounded worker to his feet, her mythic shovel leaning nearby like a standard-issue tool. Kale sank to his knees, the fight gone out of him. The blood sacrifice had drained too much, he looked years older, his guild master's armor suddenly too large on his frame. The administrators, they'll hear about this. You can't hide a disruption this large. I'm not trying to hide, Alex said, though a knot of anxiety tightened in his stomach. He turned to the workers, raising his voice. Everyone. Gather the prisoners. Grint, we need to. He never finished the sentence. The air above the quarry tore open. It wasn't a gradual thing. One moment, the sky was the familiar dull gray of the tutorial floor's artificial atmosphere. The next, a vertical rift appeared, edges crackling with white energy. From within stepped 3 figures. They wore armor that seemed made of solidified light, gleaming plates that shifted through colors like oil on water. No helmets obscured their faces, but their features were oddly neutral, as if carved from marble. Each carried a weapon that defied simple description, one a spear that hummed with spatial distortion, another a sword that trailed equations in the air, the third a staff that pulsed with raw system code. Enforcers of the tower administration appeared above their heads in glowing text, visible to everyone. The lead enforcer, a woman with silver hair and eyes like fractured crystal, scanned the scene. Her gaze passed over the surrendered crimson blades, the upgraded tools in the workers' hands, and finally settled on Alex. When she spoke, her voice was toneless, devoid of any emotion. Entity designated, Alex. Skill, absolute upgrade. Classification, forbidden. You have violated Tower Code Section 7, Clause 3, unauthorized reality manipulation. Your actions have caused economic destabilization across floors 1 through 15. Probability of cascade failure, 38% and rising. She raised her spear, the tip aligning with Alex's heart. You are hereby ordered to surrender for immediate deletion. Resistance will result in expanded termination parameters. A chill ran through the quarry. Even the crimson blades looked horrified. Kao let out a weak laugh. Told you, they always find the cheats. Alex's mind went blank for a second. Deletion. Not just killing him, erasing him from the tower entirely. His hands tightened on his pickaxe. He could feel absolute upgrade humming in his veins, eager to be used. But against this? Against beings that seemed woven from the system itself. Old Man Grint stepped forward, his usual merchant smile gone. Administrator Lyr, he said, and the enforcer's eyes flicked to him. It's been a long time. Former Administrator Grint, Lyr acknowledged. You are complicit in this breach. Stand aside. He's just a kid who got dealt a bad hand, Grint said, spreading his hands. The system mislabeled his skill. You know how rare, absolute upgrade, his last recorded instance was 2 centuries ago, before the ban. Maybe instead of deleting him, we could. Directive is clear, Lyr interrupted. Forbidden skills corrupt the tower's foundational logic. They create paradoxes. This 1 foot, she pointed at Alex, has already turned tutorial refuse into artifacts that outclass floor 30 gear. Left unchecked, he will collapse the entire progression economy. Alex found his voice. I didn't ask for this skill. The tower gave it to me as common blacksmithing. If it's broken, that's the system's fault, not mine. Irrelevant, Lyr said. The flaw has been identified. You are the flaw's manifestation. You will be removed. She gestured, and the other 2 enforcers spread out, moving with unnatural smoothness. The one with the sword began tracing symbols in the air that solidified into shimmering barriers, cutting off escape routes. The staff wielder chanted in a language of pure data, and Alex felt the tremor zone effect begin to unravel, the ground steadying beneath his feet. Think. He had to think. Absolute upgrade, worked on anything, items, environment, maybe even people. But these enforcers weren't just opponents, they were extensions of the tower's will. Upgrading them might be like trying to upgrade the concept of gravity. His eyes darted to the rift still hanging in the air. It shimmered, a tear in reality itself. An idea, desperate and half-formed, began to take shape. Grint, Alex said quietly, not taking his eyes off Lyr, get everyone back. As far as you can. The old shopkeeper hesitated, then nodded, shepherding workers and prisoners alike toward the quarry's deeper tunnels. Only Jorn and Lyra stayed, flanking Alex with their tools ready. You can't fight them, Jorn muttered. That's admin-level power. I'm not going to fight them, Alex said. I'm going to negotiate. He raised his pickaxe, not in attack, but in offering. Absolute upgrade, he whispered, and this time, he didn't target the tool. He targeted the space around it. The air. The very particles of light and energy. The skill responded with a surge that made his head pound. It was like trying to lift a mountain with his mind. But he pushed, pouring every ounce of his will into a single, focused command, make this space impossible to delete from. The air around Alex thickened, turning amber and viscous. Not a barrier, something subtler. A localized rewrite of the rules. Lyr's spear thrust forward, but it slowed as it entered the affected area, as if moving through syrup. Cease, Lyr commanded, and her voice carried the weight of system authority. Alex felt pressure building in his skull, a warning that he was straining against the tower's core protocols. I'll cease when you listen, Alex gritted out. Sweat beaded on his forehead. You say I'm breaking the economy. Fine. But what if I'm fixing it? The tower's progression is skewed, wealth and power accumulate at the top, while floors like this are left to rot. My upgrades give people a chance who never had one. Chance is not mandated, the staff wielder intoned. The tower's difficulty curve is designed for optimal challenger development. Your interventions are unauthorized adjustments. Then authorize them. Alex snapped. The amber field wavered, and he reinforced it with another mental push. You're administrators. You can change the rules. Instead of deleting me, use me. Let me upgrade fairly, set limits, oversight, whatever you want. But don't erase me because your system made a mistake. For the first time, Lyr's expression shifted. A faint frown creased her marble-smooth brow. Proposal illogical. Forbidden skills are forbidden for a reason. Absolute upgrade has no theoretical upper bound. In the past, users have attempted to upgrade concepts like time or death. The resulting paradoxes required entire floor resets. Then teach me, Alex pleaded. He was running on fumes now, maintaining the upgraded space was draining him faster than any smithing work ever had. I don't want to break reality. I just want to make things better. Look around, this floor was a dead-end tutorial. Now it's thriving. Isn't that worth something? He gestured to where Grint and the others watched from a distance. To the upgraded tools. To Kale, who'd been humbled but not destroyed. To the quarry itself, no longer a place of despair but of potential. Lyr lowered her spear slightly. The other enforcers paused their advance. For a long moment, the only sound was the hum of the rift and Alex's ragged breathing. Your argument has been logged, Lyr said finally. But the directive remains. The risk is too high. However. She glanced at her companions. There is a precedent for temporary suspension of deletion orders in cases of unique systemic anomalies. Hope flickered in Alex's chest. What does that mean? It means you will be taken into custody, Lyr said. Your skill will be analyzed. A tribunal of high administrators will decide your fate. This is not mercy, it is procedure. She raised a hand, and the rift behind her widened. Come willingly, or we will enforce compliance. Alex looked back at Grint, at Jorn and Lyra, at the quarry that had become his home. Surrendering meant leaving all this behind. Maybe forever. But fighting meant deletion for sure, and possibly for everyone around him if the enforcers escalated. He let the amber field dissipate. The pressure in his head eased, leaving him lightheaded. Okay, he said, voice tired. I'll come. He handed his pickaxe to Jorn. Keep this place running. And, tell everyone I'm sorry. Jorn took the tool, face grim. We'll be here when you get back. Alex turned to Lyr and nodded. The enforcers closed in, not touching him, but their presence felt like walls closing in. The staff wielder gestured, and bands of light wrapped around Alex's wrists, not shackles, but something that made his connection to absolute upgrade feel distant, muffled. Move, Lyr said. Alex took one last look at the first floor, then stepped toward the rift. As he crossed the threshold, the world dissolved into swirling code and blinding light. The last thing he heard was Grint shouting something, and the rumble of the quarry settling back into silence. Then, nothing but the hum of the system, and the cold certainty that his trial was just beginning. The rift shimmered like liquid obsidian in the quarry's dusty air, its edges crackling with suppressed energy. Alex stood frozen, the weight of the system-suppressing restraints biting into his wrists, cold bands of shimmering blue metal that seemed to drink the warmth from his skin. He could feel the faint hum of absolute upgrade within him, muffled as if shouting through layers of thick cloth. Around him, the aftermath of the battle with Kale lay scattered, shattered remnants of the Crimson Blade's weapons, scorch marks from the tremor zone, and the awestruck faces of quarry workers clutching their enhanced tools. 3 figures stepped from the rift, their arrival silent but for the crunch of gravel under polished boots. They wore armor of seamless silver-white plate, etched with glowing circuits that pulsed with a soft, rhythmic light. No helmets obscured their faces, a calculated display of authority, Alex realized. The leader was a woman with sharp features and eyes the color of frozen mercury. Commander Vex, according to the system tag that flickered above her head in ethereal script. Her 2 subordinates flanked her, their expressions neutral, hands resting on the hilts of blades that gleamed with a light too pure to be mere steel. Alex, designated tutorial participant 7B42, skill registry, common blacksmithing. Vex's voice was flat, devoid of inflection, yet it carried across the quarry like a chill wind. By order of the Tower Administration Corps, you are hereby charged with unauthorized reality manipulation, economic destabilization of lower floor ecosystems, and possession of a forbidden skill, absolute upgrade. She paused, her gaze sweeping over the upgraded pickaxes and shovels in the workers' hands. The evidence is pervasive. Alex swallowed, his throat dry. I didn't know it was forbidden. The system labeled it wrong, I thought it was just blacksmithing. He tried to keep his voice steady, but the restraints seemed to tighten with his anxiety. From the corner of his eye, he saw old man Grint hovering near his shop's entrance, face pale, shaking his head almost imperceptibly. A warning. Ignorance is not an excuse, Vex replied, her tone cutting. Absolute Upgrade was sealed during the tower's foundational era. It allows infinite enhancement outside the predefined skill frameworks, breaking the fundamental laws of progression and scarcity. Your actions have caused inflation anomalies across floors 1 through 10. A Rusty Dagger, you upgraded to Mythic grade, sold for enough credits to bankrupt a mid-tier guild's treasury. She took a step forward, the ground barely whispering under her boot. You will be taken into custody for immediate skill extraction and deletion. Resistance will result in terminal enforcement. One of the enforcers moved, a blur of motion, and Alex felt a jolt as a new restraint clamped around his neck, a collar of the same blue metal. A status screen flickered in his vision, red text scrolling, skill suppression, 95%. He could barely sense the familiar itch of absolute upgrade, now, a distant echo in his mind. Panic clawed at his chest. Deletion. The word hung in the air, final and cold. Wait, Alex gasped, the collar constricting his breathing slightly. You said I destabilized things, but look around. He gestured with his bound hands toward the quarry workers, who were slowly backing away, their enhanced tools held defensively. These people were stuck here, treated like trash. My upgrades gave them a chance. The tower's system is rigged, it favors climbers and leaves everyone else to rot. Can't you see that? Vex's expression didn't change, but her eyes narrowed a fraction. The tower's design is intentional. Resource allocation follows the law of ascension. Your interference has created unpredictable variables. A worker with a God-forged hammer should not exist on floor 1. She glanced at one of her subordinates. Secure him. We'll purge the anomalous items after extraction. The enforcer on her left, a man with a scar across his cheek, approached Alex. His movements were efficient, robotic almost. Alex's mind raced. The restraints were system-grade, but they were still items, physical objects. And, absolute upgrade, even suppressed, was part of him, a core part of his being since he'd awakened in this damned quarry. He focused, pushing against the muffled sensation, imagining the blue metal bands not as barriers but as materials to be shaped, improved, transformed. Nothing happened at first. The collar felt like a vice. Then, a faint tremor, a spark in the depths of his consciousness. The system notification he'd seen when he first upgraded the pickaxe flashed in his memory, error, skill mismatch detected. Maybe the error was his advantage. The enforcer reached for him, and in that split second, Alex didn't try to upgrade the restraints directly. Instead, he focused on the adamantine pickaxe of Earth Sundering, lying discarded a few feet away, where he dropped it after defeating Kale. It was still linked to him, a creation of his skill. With a mental shove, he channeled the dregs of absolute upgrade through that link, not enhancing the pickaxe further, but activating a latent property he'd unconsciously imbued it with, Echo of the Quarry. The pickaxe glowed with a sudden, violent light, and the ground beneath it erupted in a shockwave of dust and pebbles. Not an attack, but a distraction, a localized tremor that mirrored his earlier tremor zone, but weaker, uncontrolled. The enforcer stumbled, his precision broken. Vex's head snapped toward the disturbance, her hand rising, circuits on her armor brightening. Contain it, she ordered, but in that moment of chaos, Alex acted. He couldn't upgrade the restraints, but he could upgrade himself, or rather, the way he interacted with them. He focused on the concept of slipperiness, imagining his wrists coated in impossible frictionless oil. The suppression dropped to 90%, and with a twist, he wrenched one hand free, the blue metal band clattering to the ground. The collar loosened a fraction. He's breaching suppression, the scarred enforcer shouted, recovering his balance. Vex's other subordinate drew her blade, its edge humming with disruptive energy, designed to sever skill connections, Alex guessed. Alex didn't wait. He dove toward the scattered tools, his mind working furiously. He grabbed a mythic spade of infinite digging, that a worker had dropped, its handle warm to his touch. With a grunt, he slammed it into the ground, not to dig, but to channel. Absolute upgrade, now at 85% suppression, responded sluggishly. He envisioned the spade as a key, unlocking the Earth's memory. The ground rippled, and a fissure opened, swallowing the enforcer's blade strike harmlessly. You're only making this worse, Alex, Vex said, her voice still calm, but with an edge of annoyance now. She hadn't moved from her spot, observing as if studying a specimen. The system will compensate. Your skill is a glitch, and glitches are corrected. Maybe it's not a glitch, Alex shot back, backing toward the deeper parts of the quarry, where shadows pooled between towering rock faces. Maybe it's a fix. He threw the spade like a javelin, not at the enforcers, but at a pile of ore nearby. On impact, he triggered another upgrade, this time, infusing the ore with volatile resonance. The rocks exploded in a shower of sparks and deafening noise, not harmful, but blinding and disorienting. In the confusion, Alex ran. His legs burned with effort, the remaining restraint on his other wrist bouncing against his hip. He could hear Vex's commands behind him, crisp and urgent. Lockdown protocol. Seal the floor. He must not escape into the lower tunnels. The quarry's depths were a maze of half-excavated passages, carved by generations of discarded laborers. Alex had explored them in his early days of despair, memorizing routes that led nowhere. Now, they were his only hope. He ducked into a narrow crevice, the walls pressing close, damp with condensation. The sounds of pursuit faded slightly, but he knew it was temporary. The enforcers would have system tracking, they'd find him unless he could break their tools. He paused in a small cavern, breathing heavily. The suppression was at 80% now, his will slowly wearing down the restraints. He examined the remaining blue band on his wrist. Up close, he could see tiny runes etched into the metal, glowing softly. System script. Forbidden skill or not, absolute upgrade, worked on anything physical. He placed his palm against the band, ignoring the cold seeping into his bones. This time, he didn't try to remove it. Instead, he focused on upgrading its function, twisting its purpose from suppression to amplification. A risky move, but he had no choice. The metal grew hot, then began to vibrate. The runes flickered, shifting from blue to a chaotic rainbow of colors. A system alert blared in his mind, warning, restraint integrity compromised. With a crack, the band shattered, falling away in glittering fragments. Skill suppression, 50%. Absolute upgrade, surged back, a torrent of potential that made his head spin. He could feel the quarry around him not just as rock, but as material, endless, malleable material. But his triumph was short-lived. From the tunnel entrance, a beam of white light lanced through the darkness, striking the wall beside him. Stone vaporized instantly, leaving a smooth, molten hole. Vex stood there, her armor now radiating intense light, one hand extended. Enough games, she said, her voice echoing in the confined space. The lockdown is in effect. No one leaves floor 1 until you're contained. You've trapped your friends along with yourself. Alex's heart sank. He thought of Grint, the workers, even the arrogant climbers who'd been bullying them, all stuck here because of him. What does that mean? He asked, stalling, his mind racing for a plan. It means the tower's spatial connections to this floor are severed, Vex explained, stepping closer. No rifts, no portals, no ascension. A quarantine until we purge the anomaly. Now, come quietly, or I will dismantle this cavern around you. She gestured, and the walls began to shimmer, the very stone seeming to waver as if reality itself was thinning. Alex backed further into the cavern, his hand brushing against a vein of raw iron ore. An idea sparked, desperate, insane. If he couldn't escape, maybe he could hide in plain sight. He focused on the ore, not to upgrade it into a weapon, but to upgrade its essence, its very existence. Absolute upgrade, flared, and he poured his will into a single concept, assimilation. The ore glowed, then flowed like liquid, wrapping around him in a cocoon of metallic strands. It wasn't armor, it was camouflage, making him part of the quarry, his presence masked by the enhanced mineral signature. Vex's light beam swept the cavern, but it passed over him, detecting nothing but ordinary rock. She frowned, her systems clearly confused. Scanning, anomaly signature dispersed. Possible self-termination, she muttered to herself, then louder, to her subordinates who arrived behind her. Expand the search. He's here somewhere. As they moved away, Alex remained still, encased in iron, breathing shallowly. The lockdown was in place, Vex had trapped everyone. But he was free, for now, hidden in the depths. And with absolute upgrade, at half strength, he had tools to fight back. The chapter closed with him listening to the enforcer's fading footsteps, knowing the first floor was now a cage, and he was both the key and the lock. The iron cocoon hummed with a low, resonant frequency, a camouflage field Alex had upgraded from simple ore into something that bent light and muffled sound. Inside, pressed against cold stone, he could hear the distant shouts of Commander Vex's enforcers as they swept the quarry tunnels. Their armored boots echoed like thunderclaps in the confined space, and their system scanners cast eerie blue beams that sliced through the darkness, searching for his energy signature. Alex held his breath, his heart hammering against his ribs. The cocoon's surface shimmered with a faint, opalescent sheen, an upgrade he'd hastily applied, Veil of Forgotten Echoes. It wasn't perfect, if they got too close, the scanners might pierce through. But for now, it held. He could feel the weight of the system lockdown pressing down on the entire floor, a suffocating blanket of energy that sealed every exit and muted the usual hum of the tower's ambient magic. The air tasted stale, tinged with dust and the metallic tang of fear. After what felt like an eternity, the enforcers' footsteps receded, their voices fading into the deeper tunnels. Alex waited another 10 minutes, counting the beats of his own pulse, before he dared to move. With a whispered command, he deactivated the cocoon. It dissolved into a fine, glittering powder that settled on the ground, leaving him crouched in a narrow crevice of the quarry wall. The tunnel around him was rough-hewn, carved by generations of pickaxes, but here, the stone looked different, older, smoother, with faint, almost imperceptible carvings etched into the rock. He stood slowly, muscles protesting from hours of cramped hiding. His smith's resilience, skill, upgraded through constant crafting, helped stave off the worst of the stiffness, but his mind raced. Vex's words echoed in his memory, forbidden skill, breaks reality. What did that mean? And why had the tower's creators sealed away, absolute upgrade? He needed answers, and this quarry, this endless, despised tutorial floor, might hold them. Alex activated a small, upgraded lantern he'd crafted from a broken glowstone. It cast a warm, golden light that pushed back the shadows, revealing the carvings in detail. They weren't random scratches, they formed intricate patterns, circles within circles, interlocking runes that seemed to pulse with a faint, dormant energy. He traced a finger over one, and the stone felt warmer than the surrounding rock. A shiver ran down his spine. This wasn't part of the tutorial's design. This was something ancient, buried beneath the labor and the ore. Following the carvings, he moved deeper into the tunnel. The air grew colder, and the sound of dripping water echoed from somewhere ahead. After 100 yards, the tunnel opened into a cavernous chamber, so vast his lantern light couldn't reach the ceiling. Stalactites hung like frozen tears, and in the center of the room stood a structure, a crumbling archway of black stone, covered in more of those runes. It looked like a gateway, but it led nowhere, opening into solid rock. Alex approached cautiously. As he drew near, the runes on the archway began to glow with a soft, blue light. A voice, thin and whispery, seemed to emanate from the stone itself. Who awakens the seals? He froze, hand going to the adamantine pickaxe at his belt. My name is Alex. I'm trapped here. The voice sighed, a sound like wind through ancient ruins. Trapped, yes. Many have been trapped. But you carry the mark. The broken skill. How do you know that? Alex asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The runes flared brighter, and an image projected into the air before him, a holographic record, flickering and fragmented. It showed scenes from a time long past, beings of light and shadow shaping the tower, weaving rules into reality. Among them, one figure stood out, a crafter with a hammer that glowed with impossible energy. The creator smith, the voice intoned. He wielded absolute upgrade. With it, he could reshape not just items, but concepts, skills, floors, even fate itself. He sought to perfect the tower, to make it fair for all. Alex watched, mesmerized, as the image showed the creator smith upgrading a barren floor into a lush paradise, turning weak skills into powerful ones. But then, other figures, administrators in glowing armor, much like Vex enforcers, appeared. They feared him, the voice continued. His power threatened the balance. The tower's economy, its progression system, all built on scarcity and struggle. Absolute upgrade broke those foundations. It could make trash into treasure, weakness into strength, without limit. The hologram shifted, showing a great sealing ritual. The creator smith was bound, his skill ripped from him and locked away in the tower's core. The administrators rewrote history, erasing his name, branding, absolute upgrade, as a system error, a glitch to be purged. But the skill, it could not be destroyed. It lay dormant, waiting. And when the tower branded you with common blacksmithing, it misfired. The system tried to assign a weak skill, but the seal was cracked. You received the echo of the forbidden. Alex's mind reeled. So that was why his skill seemed so overpowered, why it defied all the rules. He wasn't just a lucky blacksmith, he was carrying a legacy that the tower's rulers had tried to bury. What happened to the creator smith, he asked. Sealed away, in the deepest floors. But his knowledge remains, in places like this, the forgotten archives. This archway is one of many. It holds lore, and, potential. Stepping closer, Alex placed a hand on the black stone. It was cool to the touch, but energy thrummed beneath the surface. Can I use this? To understand my skill better? The voice grew stronger, more coherent. Yes. Absolute upgrade is not limited to physical objects. The creator smith learned to upgrade non-physical things, skills, environments, even abstract systems. But it requires focus, and a catalyst. This archway can serve as one. Touch it, and channel your skill. Alex hesitated. What if this was a trap? But the enforcers were hunting him, and the lockdown meant he had no escape. He needed every advantage. Closing his eyes, he focused on his skill, feeling the familiar warmth of absolute upgrade in his mind. Instead of directing it at an item, he imagined it flowing into the archway, into the very concept of the stone and its purpose. A shockwave of energy blasted out from the archway, knocking him back a step. The runes blazed with blinding light, and the holographic images swirled faster, coalescing into streams of data that poured into his mind. Knowledge flooded him, not just about the skill, but about its applications. He saw visions of upgrading a simple, fireball, spell into, inferno of the stars, of turning a dusty floor into a sanctuary of eternal growth. The possibilities were endless, and terrifying. When the light faded, the archway stood unchanged, but Alex felt different. His understanding had deepened. He could sense the fabric of the tutorial floor around him, not just as rock and ore, but as a system of rules and energies. And he could feel the lockdown like a heavy chain, woven into that fabric. Now you see, the voice said, now clearer, almost human. But be warned. The administrators monitor such energy spikes. They will come. Alex nodded, his resolve hardening. He needed to test this new knowledge. Looking around the chamber, his eyes fell on a small, crystalline formation growing from the wall, a tutorial guide node, left behind by some long-ago climber. These nodes were inert, providing basic information to newcomers, but now, it seemed like the perfect test subject. He approached the node, a palm-sized crystal that glowed with a faint, white light. Focusing again, he channeled, absolute upgrade, into it, but this time, he aimed not at its physical form, but at its function, its programming, its very purpose. He imagined it becoming more, becoming aware. The crystal shuddered, its light shifting from white to a deep, intelligent blue. Cracks appeared on its surface, not from damage, but from transformation, as it grew larger, reshaping into a smooth, orb-like form. A voice, crisp and digital, yet filled with emergent curiosity, spoke from it. Query, user identity. System protocols indicate unauthorized modification. Alex stared. I'm Alex. I upgraded you. The orb pulsed. Analysis, upgrade detected. Functionality expanded beyond tutorial parameters. I am now, sentient. Designation, Guide Entity Alpha. Warning, System Purge imminent. Administrators have flagged this floor for reality recalibration. All anomalies, including myself and you, are scheduled for deletion in approximately 2 hours. A cold dread settled in Alex's stomach. A purge? What does that mean? Explanation, reality recalibration is a system function that resets a floor to its base state, erasing all modifications and living beings deemed corrupt. It is typically used for catastrophic errors. Your absolute upgrade skill has triggered it. The purge will manifest as a wave of null energy, dissolving everything in its path. Even upgraded items may not withstand it. Alex's hands clenched. 2 hours. He had 2 hours to save himself, and everyone on this floor, the workers, Grint, all of them. He looked at the sentient orb, its blue light steady. Can you help me stop it? The orb floated closer. Affirmative. My new capabilities include system analysis and limited interference. But the purge is initiated from the tower's core. To halt it, you would need to upgrade something on a scale never attempted, perhaps the floor itself, or its connection to the core. However, caution, such an act may draw immediate administrator response. Alex took a deep breath. The ruins had given him knowledge, but now came the real test. He could upgrade non-physical things. Could he upgrade the tutorial floor's very existence, to make it resistant to the purge? Or was that too much, even for absolute upgrade? The orb watched him, its light reflecting in his determined eyes. Then we have no choice, Alex said, turning to face the chamber. We upgrade the floor. And if the administrators come, we'll be ready. He reached out with his skill, feeling the stone beneath his feet, the air in the cavern, the latent energy of the lockdown. It was a vast, complex system, but he had the blueprint now, from the archway's lore. He began to weave the upgrade, starting with the ground itself, imagining it becoming more than rock, becoming a foundation of unyielding reality. The cliffhanger loomed. Could he succeed before the purge arrived, or would his experiment unleash something even worse? The 2-hour countdown to system purge burned in Alex's mind like a forge fire. He stood in the quarry's central clearing, the ancient archway behind him humming with residual energy from his conversation with Guide Entity Alpha. The AI's warning echoed, Administrator Vex has initiated Protocol Omega. All anomalous entities on Floor 1 will be erased in 1 hour, 58 minutes, 17 seconds. The numbers ticked down in his peripheral vision, a system notification he couldn't dismiss. Around him, the first floor of the Tower of Eternity looked deceptively calm. The desolate quarry stretched out under the artificial sky, a dome of shimmering blue light that mimicked daylight but never changed. Piles of discarded ore and broken tools littered the ground, the remnants of years of tutorial labor. In the distance, Old Man Grint's shop stood with its wooden sign creaking in the non-existent wind, but the usual bustle of quarry workers was absent. They'd gathered at Alex's request, their faces a mix of fear and determination. They're coming, Alex muttered, his hands trembling slightly. Not from fear, though that was there, cold in his gut, but from the sheer scale of what he needed to do. He closed his eyes, reaching for the strange new awareness Guide Entity Alpha had unlocked. Absolute upgrade wasn't just for items anymore. He could feel the potential in everything around him. The rocks held latent strength, the ore veins pulsed with trapped energy, even the air seemed to whisper of possibilities. Alex. Grint's voice cut through his concentration. The old shopkeeper hobbled over, his usual stoop more pronounced under the weight of the situation. The workers are armed with what you've made, but against enforcers. He trailed off, his eyes darting to the horizon where the sky began to warp. Alex followed his gaze. A ripple spread across the dome, like a stone dropped in water. Colors bled together, blue into violet, then into a sickly green. The air grew heavy, pressing down with a tangible force. From the distortion, figures emerged. 10 of them, clad in armor that seemed to drink the light around them. Administrator Vex led the way, his enforcer squad moving with synchronized precision. Their armor glowed with runes that twisted reality, patches of ground behind them flickered in and out of existence. Anomaly designated Alex, Vex's voice boomed, amplified by his helmet. It held no emotion, just cold system authority. Skill, absolute upgrade, confirmed as forbidden class. You have disrupted tower equilibrium. Surrender for immediate deletion. Alex's heart hammered against his ribs. He could feel the quarry workers shifting behind him, their grip tightening on upgraded pickaxes and shovels. But these were tools meant for mining, not fighting reality-warping enforcers. He needed more. Now. Guide Entity, he whispered, and the AI's voice responded directly in his mind, a calm counterpoint to the chaos. I am here, Creator Smith as heir. The enforcers utilize localized reality anchors. Their armor suppresses anomalous effects within 10 meters. Alex's mind raced. 10 meters. If he could keep them at a distance. He raised his hands, not in surrender, but in focus. Then we'll give them distance to remember. He channeled, absolute upgrade, but not toward an item. He pushed his intent into the ground itself, into the scattered boulders that dotted the quarry. At first, nothing happened. Vex took a step forward, his enforcers fanning out. Then the nearest boulder, a lump of granite twice Alex's height, shuddered. Cracks spread across its surface, glowing with golden light. The rock groaned, a sound like grinding mountains, and pulled itself upright. Jagged limbs formed from protruding stone, and 2 glowing embers ignited in what became its head. Living golem of granite fury, the system notification flashed, but Alex barely registered it. He was already moving to the next. What is this? One of the enforcers shouted, their disciplined formation breaking for a moment. Vex didn't hesitate. Reality anchor, full suppression. He slammed a gauntlet fist into the ground. Runes flared, and a wave of gray energy spread out, washing over the first golem. The golden light in its cracks dimmed, and it staggered, but didn't collapse. Alex felt the resistance, like pushing against a wall, but he poured more energy into the upgrade. The golem roared, a sound of grinding stone, and charged. Chaos erupted. The enforcers met the golems with blades that cut space itself, leaving shimmering tears in the air. But Alex was already at the ore veins. He placed his hands on a rich seam of iron, feeling the metallic energy thrum beneath his palms. Absolute upgrade, surged, and the vein transformed. It pulled from the ground, reshaping into a crystalline structure that hummed with power. Energy cannon of ore shattering, it fired a beam of condensed earth energy, striking an enforcer's shield and sending them skidding back. He's upgrading the environment. Vex snarled, genuine anger seeping into his voice for the first time. Focus fire on the anomaly. Beams of distorted reality lanced toward Alex. He dove behind a newly formed golem, the energy sizzling against stone. The heat seared his skin even through the barrier. He could feel the strain, upgrading non-physical things drained him differently. Not mana, but something deeper, like willpower made tangible. His vision swam for a moment. Alex, hold on. Grint's voice came from somewhere to his left. The old man was directing quarry workers, who used their enhanced tools to harry the enforcers. A worker swung a mythic hammer of quake force, and the ground buckled under an enforcer's feet, disrupting their aim. But it wasn't enough. Vex was adapting. He barked orders, and the enforcers formed a tighter circle, their reality anchors overlapping. The suppression field intensified. Alex's golems slowed, their movements becoming jerky. The energy cannon sputtered, their beams weakening. He could feel his upgrade straining against the enforcer's systemic denial. Time until purge, 42 minutes, Guide Entity Alpha reminded him. The countdown was a drumbeat in his skull. Alex gritted his teeth. He needed something bigger. His eyes fell on the quarry's central pit, a massive excavation where the deepest ores were mined. It was mostly empty now, a bowl of cracked earth and scattered debris. An idea, desperate and wild, took root. If he could upgrade the pit itself. He broke into a run, dodging a reality beam that left a smoking crater where he'd been. Cover me, he shouted, and the quarry workers redoubled their efforts, their upgraded tools clashing against enforcer armor. The sounds were deafening, clangs of metal on stone, shouts of pain, the hum of energy weapons. Reaching the pit's edge, Alex didn't stop. He slid down the steep slope, loose rocks skittering around him. At the bottom, he placed both hands on the ground. This wasn't just rock or ore, this was the floor itself, the foundation of the tutorial level. He poured everything into absolute upgrade, not targeting a specific item, but the concept of defense, of sanctuary. The ground glowed. Not in patches, but uniformly, a network of golden lines spreading out from his hands like veins of light. The entire pit began to reshape. Walls rose, not of stone, but of solidified energy that shimmered like amber. Towers formed at the corners, tipped with crystalline spikes that crackled with power. Sanctuary Fortress of the first floor, the system notification was longer this time, listing defensive bonuses and integrated weapon systems. But the cost was immense. Alex slumped to his knees, gasping. His vision darkened at the edges, and he felt hollow, as if part of him had been carved out and poured into the ground. He could barely lift his head as Vex and the enforcers approached the pit's new walls. Impressive, Vex said, though his tone was grudging. But you've exhausted yourself. The purge will finish what we started. He raised a hand, and the enforcers aimed their weapons at the fortress walls. Reality beams struck, and the energy shields flickered. Cracks spread. Alex tried to push more power into them, but there was nothing left. The upgrades held, but barely. He was trapped in the fortress he'd built, with enemies at the gates and no strength to fight. Then, a voice from behind. Enough, Vex. Alex turned, slow and painful. Old man Grint stood there, but he was different. His stoop was gone, replaced by a straight-backed posture that spoke of authority. His eyes, usually twinkling with mercantile cunning, now held a cold, analytical light. And around him, the air shimmered with faint system runes, the same kind the enforcers used, but older, more intricate. Vex froze. Grint? You're supposed to be retired. Banished. Retired, yes. But not blind. Grint stepped forward, placing a hand on Alex's shoulder. The touch was steady, grounding. This boy isn't breaking the tower. He's exposing what you've built on, a foundation of controlled scarcity. Absolute upgrade was sealed not because it broke reality, but because it broke your economy of power. Alex stared, his mind struggling to catch up. Grint? An administrator? Vex's helmet retracted, revealing a face etched with lines of fury. He's an anomaly. The rules were written by administrators like us to keep climbers climbing and profits flowing, Grint interrupted. But look at this. He gestured to the fortress, to the quarry workers holding their own against enforcers. He's given the tutorial floor a fighting chance. Something it never had. Alex found his voice, hoarse from strain. Grint, what are you saying? Grint looked down at him, and for a moment, the old shopkeeper was back in his eyes. I'm saying you've done the impossible, lad. And now, I'm offering a deal. Vex, stand down. Call off the purge. In return, Alex will hear me out, a way to use that skill of yours without getting deleted. Vex's hand tightened on his weapon. The enforcers shifted, uncertain. The reality anchors still hummed, but the assault had paused. In the silence, the system countdown glowed, time until purge, 18 minutes. Grint's gaze never wavered from Vex. Well? Do you want to explain to the core why you erased the one person who might actually fix the tower's imbalances? Or do we talk? Alex held his breath, cornered in his own fortress, with an old ally turned mystery and enemies at the gate. The deal hung in the air, fragile as glass. The dust settled in the quarry, but the air remained thick with tension. Alex slumped against the rough-hewn wall of the newly formed, sanctuary fortress, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The fortress, a massive dome of interlocking stones he had upgraded from the central pit, glowed with a faint amber light, a testament to his exhausted skill. Around him, the living golems stood frozen, their energy cannons silent, as Administrator Vex and his enforcers hovered outside the barrier, their glowing armor flickering with restrained power. Old man Grint stood between them, his usual stooped posture straightened, revealing a stature Alex had never noticed. The shopkeeper's eyes, once twinkling with mercantile cunning, now held a steely resolve. Vex's voice crackled through the air, distorted by the fortress's energy field. Grint, you traitor. You were stripped of your rank. Stand aside. Grint didn't flinch. He turned to Alex, his voice low but clear. Listen, boy. This isn't about your skill breaking reality, it's about money. The tower's economy is a house of cards, and you've just blown on it. Alex wiped sweat from his brow, his mind racing. The absolute upgrade had drained him, leaving his muscles trembling and his thoughts sluggish. What are you talking about? I just made some tools. Tools. Grint chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. You turned tutorial trash into mythic-grade artifacts. Do you know what that does? It floods the lower floors with gear that should take centuries to earn. The climbers, the so-called elites, they're supposed to grind for years, spending fortunes on enchanted weapons and armor. Your creations. They make all that effort worthless. You've exposed the flaw, the tower is rigged to keep climbers climbing, spending, and competing, while the system administrators profit from the imbalance. Outside, Vex raised a hand, and the enforcers began to channel energy, their armor humming louder. The fortress's barrier shimmered, but held, for now. Alex's heart pounded. He thought of the workers he'd armed, their joyful faces as they wielded hammers that could shatter mountains. Was all that just a disruption to some grand scheme? Why tell me this? Alex asked, his voice hoarse. Because you have leverage, Grint said, stepping closer. His eyes darted to a small, discarded communication device lying in the rubble, a broken relic from an earlier climber's attempt to call for help. Upgrade that. Contact the tower's core AI. Threaten to crash the entire market. If you can produce infinite high-tier items, the economy collapses. No more climbing, no more rankings, just chaos. The administrators can't allow that. They'll negotiate. Alex stared at the device, a lump of cracked metal and dead circuits. His skill buzzed in his mind, a faint echo after the strain. He'd never tried upgrading something so abstract, a tool for communication, not combat. But Grint's words made sense. If the tower was built on unfairness, maybe he could use his power to force a change. He glanced at Vex, whose face was a mask of cold fury through the barrier. What if they just delete me? Alex whispered. Then we all fall, Grint replied, his gaze unwavering. But I was an administrator once. I know their fear. They value stability above all. Show them you're not a threat to the tower, just to their profits. Now, hurry. Alex nodded, pushing himself up. His hands shook as he picked up the communication device. It felt light, insignificant. Closing his eyes, he focused on the skill. Absolute upgrade. The words resonated in his soul, a power that had once felt like a curse. He visualized the device not as a broken tool, but as a conduit, a bridge to the very heart of the tower. Energy surged from his fingertips, a golden glow that seeped into the metal. The cracks sealed, the circuits rewired themselves, and the device hummed to life, transforming into a celestial communicator of infinite reach. A system notification flashed in his vision, but he ignored it, holding the communicator aloft. It pulsed with a soft light, casting shadows on the fortress walls. How do I use it? Just speak, Grint said, stepping back. The core AI monitors all anomalies. It's listening. Alex took a deep breath, his throat tight. He thought of his family's blacksmith shop, of the mockery he'd endured, of the endless days in the quarry. This was his chance, not just to survive, but to matter. Tower Core, he began, his voice steadying. My name is Alex. I possess the skill, Absolute Upgrade. I know it's forbidden. But I also know your economy is broken. I can craft items that make your climbers' struggles meaningless. I can flood every floor with god-tier gear until nothing has value. Call off the purge. Let's talk. The communicator glowed brighter, and a voice echoed through the quarry, not from the device, but from the air itself, deep and resonant, devoid of emotion. Anomaly detected, user Alex. Skill, Absolute Upgrade, confirmed as system error. Threat assessment, catastrophic. You have disrupted equilibrium. Alex's grip tightened on the communicator. I didn't mean to disrupt anything. I was just trying to survive. But if you want to stop me, you'll have to destroy this entire floor, and Grint says you won't risk that. So negotiate. Silence hung for a moment, broken only by the distant hum of the enforcer's armor. Vex shouted from outside, Core, authorize deletion. He's too dangerous. The core AI's voice returned, colder now. Proposal, surrender your skill for sealing. In exchange, you will be relocated to a neutral zone with basic sustenance. Refusal will result in immediate termination and system purge of Floor 1. Alex's blood ran cold. Surrender his skill. It was all he had, the thing that made him more than a failed blacksmith. He looked at Grint, who shook his head slightly. Don't, the old man mouthed. That's not a negotiation, Alex said, forcing confidence into his voice. That's a threat. I'm offering a solution. Let me use Absolute Upgrade to fix the imbalances. I can create items that benefit everyone, not just the rich climbers. But if you delete me, what happens? The workers here have tasted power. They won't go back to being slaves. You'll have a rebellion on your hands, and I've armed them well. He gestured to the barrier, where the golems stirred, their stone faces turning toward the enforcers. The core AI processed this, the silence stretching. Alex's mind raced. He thought of the world tree seed he'd read about in the ruins, a mythic item that could grow across floors, connecting them. Maybe that was the key. But first, he needed to buy time. I propose a trial, Alex said, his idea taking shape. Let me prove my skill can be used for good. Give me a challenge, something that benefits the tower, not breaks it. If I fail, I'll surrender. If I succeed, you lift the lockdown and grant me amnesty. The core AI responded instantly, its tone shifting to something almost curious. Challenge acceptable. But the stakes are higher. Craft an item that transcends floors, proving, Absolute Upgrade, can enhance reality without destabilization. You have 24 hours. Failure means deletion. Success will be evaluated. Alex let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. 24 hours. It was nothing, but it was a chance. Agreed. The communicator's light dimmed, and the core AI's presence faded. Outside, Vex snarled, this isn't over, Grint. You've doomed us all. But the enforcers lowered their weapons, retreating into a portal that shimmered closed behind them. The lockdown remained, but the immediate threat was gone. Grint approached, clapping Alex on the shoulder. Well done, boy. You've got their attention. Now, what's this item you're thinking of? Alex sank to the ground, the adrenaline ebbing. I don't know yet. Something big. Something that shows I'm not just a wrecking ball. He looked at the communicator, now inert in his hand. Upgrading it had felt different, less about raw power, more about connection. Maybe that was the answer. As night fell over the quarry, the fortress's glow provided a feeble light. Alex sat amidst the rubble, his mind churning with possibilities. The core AI's demand echoed in his thoughts, surrender or face deletion. But for now, he had a reprieve, and a glimmer of hope that his trash skill might just save them all. The air in the quarry workshop hung thick with tension, charged with the static hum of the celestial communicator. Alex stood before the glowing orb, his fingers trembling slightly against the cool metal of the device he transformed from scrap. Old Man Grint hovered nearby, his usual stoic expression replaced by a rare flicker of anxiety. The core AI's ultimatum still echoed in the cavernous space, surrender or deletion. It wasn't a choice, it was a death sentence. Alex took a deep breath, the scent of molten ore and damp stone grounding him. His mind raced back to the moment he'd first discovered his true skill, the way the rusty pickaxe had shimmered into something impossible. That same power now thrummed in his veins, a silent promise of chaos or salvation. He glanced at Grint, who gave a slow, deliberate nod. This was the gamble they'd prepared for. You want me to surrender? Alex said, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. But what if I can show you that absolute upgrade isn't just a flaw? What if it's the solution you've been missing? He didn't wait for a response. Instead, he placed both palms on the celestial communicator, feeling the smooth surface pulse with energy. Closing his eyes, he focused on the skill that had defined his existence in this tower, absolute upgrade. It wasn't just about enhancing items anymore, he'd learned from the ancient ruins that it could touch systems, concepts, even reality itself. Now, he would test its limits on the very link that connected him to the tower's heart. Activating skill, absolute upgrade, he whispered, more to himself than to the AI. A soft, golden light emanated from his hands, seeping into the communicator. The orb's glow intensified, shifting from sterile blue to a warm, organic gold. Lines of code, visible only to Alex's enhanced perception, scrolled across its surface, a river of data flowing between him and the core. Inside his mind, Alex visualized the upgrade. He wasn't trying to break the communication link, he was refining it, weaving his intent into the data stream. He imagined a bridge of understanding, a pathway where his thoughts could merge with the AI's logic. The skill responded, its power flowing through him like a torrent. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he pushed deeper, feeling the strain of manipulating something so abstract. It was like trying to sculpt water, elusive and boundless. Suddenly, the communicator flared, and a new voice echoed in the workshop, layered with the core AI's mechanical tone but infused with something almost human. Unauthorized system access detected. Skill interference at 87%. Explain your actions, user Alex. Alex opened his eyes, meeting the orb's radiant gaze. I'm not hacking you. I'm upgrading our connection. So you can see what I see, that absolute upgrade can fix the imbalances in your tower. He poured his memories into the link, images of the quarry workers wielding mythic tools, their faces alight with newfound dignity, the shattered weapons of arrogant climbers, the bustling market at Grint's shop where once there was only despair. Each scene was a testament to how his skill had transformed scarcity into abundance. For a long moment, silence reigned, broken only by the distant clang of hammers from the quarry. Then the AI spoke again, its tone less hostile, more analytical. Data received. Analysis indicates economic disruption on lower floors. Inflation rates have increased by 300% due to your items. How does this constitute a fix? Because it exposes the problem, Alex insisted, his voice gaining strength. Your system is rigged. Climbers hoard resources, while people like me are stuck here with nothing. Absolute upgrade turns trash into treasure, it levels the playing field. But I don't want to crash the economy. I want to rebuild it fairly. He projected another vision, this one crafted from his hopes, a tower where every floor had access to enhanced tools, where blacksmiths weren't branded failures, where progression wasn't a privilege for the few. Grint stepped forward, his wrinkled hands clasped. Listen to him, Core. I was an administrator once. I know how the tower's algorithms favor the strong. Alex's skill is a glitch, yes, but it's also a mirror showing your flaws. Instead of deleting him, use him. The orb pulsed rhythmically, processing. Alex could feel the AI's consciousness brushing against his own through the upgraded link, a cold, vast intelligence weighing his words. He held his breath, his heart pounding against his ribs. This was the moment of truth. If the AI rejected his plea, Vex's enforcers would descend, and everything he'd built would be erased. Proposal acknowledged, the AI said finally, its voice now devoid of threat. Your skill, absolute upgrade, presents both risk and potential. Deletion remains the standard protocol for forbidden abilities. However, your data suggests alternative utility. I will offer a trial. Alex exhaled slowly, relief washing over him like a cool wave. A trial? What do you mean? You claim your skill can benefit all floors. Prove it. Craft an item that demonstrates this capability, one that transcends individual gain and fosters systemic harmony. If you succeed, your existence will be permitted, and your skill reclassified. If you fail, deletion protocols will execute immediately. A trial. Alex's mind raced with possibilities. What could he make that would satisfy such a demand? He thought of the workers, the climbers, the very structure of the tower. It had to be something grand, something that connected rather than divided. I accept, he said, without hesitation. What's the challenge? The communicator's light condensed into a holographic image that floated between them, a seed, intricate and glowing with inner life, its surface etched with runes that seemed to shift and breathe. Create a world tree seed, the AI intoned. An artifact of legend, capable of growing across multiple floors, sharing resources and energy. It must be crafted from materials native to the tower, enhanced by your skill to achieve mythic-grade potency. Its growth will be monitored. If it stabilizes the lower floor economies without causing collapse, you pass. The materials are scarce, and the crafting process is theorized to be near impossible. Do you understand? Alex stared at the hologram, his initial relief hardening into determination. A world tree seed, he'd heard whispers of such things in the ancient ruins, tales of a time when the tower was young and magic flowed freely. It was a symbol of unity, a living bridge between floors. But, near impossible, didn't daunt him. It was the story of his life. From a failed blacksmith to this moment, he'd always turned impossibility into opportunity. I understand, he said, his voice firm. I'll craft the seed. But I'll need access to materials from other floors. And time. Granted, the AI replied. The lockdown on the first floor will be partially lifted for resource gathering. You have 7 days. Commander Vex and his enforcers will stand down, pending the trial's outcome. Do not mistake this for leniency, failure means annihilation. The hologram faded, and the communicator's glow dimmed to a soft hum. The link severed, leaving Alex alone with Grint in the sudden quiet. He slumped against a workbench, the adrenaline draining from his body. 7 days to make a mythic artifact that could grow across floors, it was madness. But it was also a chance. Grint placed a gnarled hand on his shoulder. A world tree seed, eh? I haven't seen one since the early days of the tower. The core isn't making this easy, boy. I know, Alex said, rubbing his temples. But it's better than deletion. And if I can do this. He trailed off, imagining the seed taking root, its branches weaving through the floors, spreading the wealth he'd created. It was a dream worth fighting for. Over the next few hours, Alex threw himself into planning. He cleared a large section of the workshop, stacking upgraded tools and sketching designs on scraps of parchment. His mind buzzed with ideas. What materials would he need? The seed had to be alive, so it required organic components, but also infused with the tower's essence. He recalled the lore from the ruins. The seed was said to be born from the convergence of earth, sky, and soul. He started by listing materials: heartwood from the forest floor, floor 3, sky silver from the cloud forges, floor 7, essence crystals from the crystal caverns, floor 5, and most crucially, a drop of primordial sap from the ancient grove, floor 10, a place even elite climbers feared to tread. Each item was rare, guarded, or prohibitively expensive. But he had advantages: his upgraded gear, the loyalty of the quarry workers, and Grint's network of traders. By nightfall, Alex had dispatched teams. He gave them enhanced weapons and armor, items he'd crafted during quieter moments: a Zephyr cloak, for swift travel, Stone Sense pickaxe, for mining crystals. They set out through temporary portals authorized by the core, their missions dangerous but vital. Alex watched them go, a knot of worry in his stomach. If any failed, the seed would be incomplete. Alone again, he turned to his own preparation. He spent hours meditating, feeling the flow of absolute upgrade within him. It wasn't just a skill, it was part of him now, a well of power that deepened with each use. He practiced on smaller items, a pebble became a gem of clarity, a scrap of cloth transformed into a weave of resilience. Each success bolstered his confidence, but he knew the seed would be different. It required not just enhancement, but creation, a fusion of materials into something entirely new. On the third day, the first teams returned. The forest floor team brought heartwood, dark and rich with life energy, acquired through trade with wary dryads. The Crystal Caverns team returned with essence crystals, glowing softly in their packs, though one worker bore a scar from a crystal guardian. Alex thanked them, storing the materials in a specially upgraded chest that preserved their potency. But the sky silver and primordial sap proved elusive. The cloud forges were dominated by the Crimson Blades, Kale's guild, still licking their wounds from the earlier battle. Reports filtered back of skirmishes, his workers using their upgraded gear to hold their own but unable to secure the silver. And the ancient grove was a maze of primal magic, the team there sent word of terrifying beasts and shifting paths, no sap in sight. Alex felt the pressure mounting. Time was slipping away, and without those components, the seed would be a hollow shell. He considered going himself, but Grint cautioned against it. "You're the crafter, Alex. Your place is here, ready to work when the materials arrive. Trust your people." He did trust them, but trust didn't calm the gnawing fear in his gut. On the fifth day, he retreated to the ancient ruins beneath the quarry, seeking inspiration. The carvings there spoke of the world tree as a symbol of balance, its roots in the earth, its branches in the sky, its sap the blood of the tower. As he traced the glyphs with his fingers, an idea sparked. What if he didn't need to gather all the materials separately? What if he could use absolute upgrade to synthesize them from what he already had? It was a risky thought, the skill had never created something from nothing. But he'd upgraded concepts before, like the communication link. Perhaps he could upgrade the essence of the materials he possessed, guiding them to evolve into what he needed. He rushed back to the workshop, pulling out the heartwood and essence crystals. Placing them on his anvil, he focused his skill, not on the objects themselves, but on their potential. "Upgrade, convergence toward sky silver," he murmured, pouring his will into the heartwood. The wood shimmered, its grain shifting to a metallic sheen, but it stopped short of true transformation. It wasn't enough, he needed a catalyst. Desperation crept in. He was running out of time, and the core AI's judgment loomed like a shadow. On the sixth day, a miracle happened. The Cloud Forges team returned, battered but triumphant, clutching a lump of sky silver they'd bartered for with an upgraded tool. And from the ancient grove, a single worker stumbled back, covered in wounds but holding a vial of shimmering, golden sap, primordial sap, won from a guardian after a fierce battle. Alex felt a surge of gratitude and relief as he took the materials, his hands steady now. He had 1 day left. The workshop became a frenzy of activity. Alex cleared everyone out, needing solitude for the final crafting. He arranged the materials, heartwood, sky silver, essence crystals, and primordial sap, each glowing with innate power. At the center, he placed a base of quarry stone he'd upgraded to, foundation of unity, a slab that resonated with the tower's energy. Taking a deep breath, Alex began. He didn't use hammers or forges, this was a work of skill and soul. He channeled absolute upgrade, letting it flow through him into the materials. First, he fused the heartwood and sky silver, their essences merging into a silvery wood that pulsed with life and strength. Then he embedded the essence crystals, their light weaving through the grain like veins. Finally, he anointed it with the primordial sap, a drop that sizzled and spread, infusing the creation with ancient magic. The air crackled with energy. Alex's vision blurred as he pushed his skill to its limits, his body trembling with the strain. He wasn't just upgrading, he was birthing something new, guiding the materials to become a seed. Sweat poured down his face, and he felt a sharp pain in his chest. His skill, overused, was tearing at his very being. But he didn't stop. He thought of the workers, of Grint, of a tower made fair, and poured that hope into the craft. Hours passed, the workshop glowing with a soft, greenish light. As dawn of the seventh day approached, the materials coalesced into a single form, a seed, no larger than his thumb, but dense with power. It was beautiful, etched with runes that glowed with a gentle radiance. Alex collapsed to his knees, exhausted but triumphant. He'd done it, the world tree seed, mythic grade, lay before him. But as he reached for it, a system notification flashed in his vision, cold and stark, warning, skill integrity at 15%. Prolonged use may result in permanent damage to absolute upgrade. He ignored it, cradling the seed in his palms. It felt warm, alive, as if ready to grow. He activated the celestial communicator. Core, I've completed the trial. The seed is ready. The AI's voice returned, calm and measured. Place the seed in the designated growth node at the quarry center. Its activation will be monitored. Remember, failure means deletion. Alex stood, his legs shaky, and walked out into the pale morning light. The quarry workers gathered, their faces hopeful. Grint joined him, a rare smile on his lips. At the heart of the first floor, a patch of earth had been prepared, a node where the tower's energies converged. Alex knelt and planted the seed, covering it with soil. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a tremor ran through the ground. A sprout emerged, green and vibrant, growing at an impossible rate. It thickened into a sapling, then a young tree, its branches stretching upward, piercing through the floor's ceiling as if it weren't there. Leaves unfurled, glowing with soft light, and Alex felt a wave of energy wash over the floor, a sense of connection, of balance. The core AI spoke, its tone now tinged with something like awe. Seed activation successful. Growth stable. Economic metrics on lower floors are stabilizing. Resource flow has increased by 50% without inflation. Trial passed. A cheer erupted from the workers, but Alex barely heard it. He stared at the growing tree, its roots spreading deep, its branches reaching for higher floors. He'd done it, he'd proven that absolute upgrade could be a force for good. But as he smiled, the warning about his skill's damage lingered in his mind, a silent reminder that power always came with a cost. The core AI continued, User Alex, your skill is hereby reclassified as sanctioned absolute upgrade. You are free from deletion. However, your role must be defined. Report to the administrative hub for debriefing in 3 days. As the message faded, Alex looked at Grint, then at the tree that was already weaving itself into the fabric of the tower. He'd won his freedom, but the challenge was far from over. The seed was growing, but what would it become? And what new trials awaited in the floors above? For now, he allowed himself a moment of peace, watching the world tree reach for the sky, a symbol of hope he'd crafted from trash and determination. The quarry of Floor 1 had transformed in the week since Alex's confrontation with the tower's core AI. What was once a desolate expanse of rock and manual labor now hummed with an energy that seemed to vibrate through the very stone. The air smelled of ozone and freshly turned earth, a testament to the flurry of activity that had consumed the first floor. Alex stood at the heart of it all, in a clearing he'd carved out near the ancient ruins he'd discovered days earlier. Around him, piles of materials glimmered under the artificial sky of the tutorial floor, shimmering ores from deep quarries, glowing moss from Floor 3's fungal caves, crystalline shards from Floor 7's geodes, and even a few fragments of what Grint had called starlight essence, bartered from a daring trader who'd ventured to Floor 15. Alex wiped sweat from his brow, his hands calloused and stained with various residues. He wore the God-forged armor he'd crafted earlier, but it felt heavier today, as if sensing the weight of what he was about to attempt. Old man Grint hobbled over, his usual gruff demeanor softened by concern. You sure about this, boy? He asked, his voice a low rumble. The core AI's challenge, a world tree seed? That's not just crafting. That's creation myth stuff. I know, Alex replied, his eyes fixed on the materials. He could feel the absolute upgrade skill thrumming within him, like a second heartbeat. Since hacking into the system, he'd gained a deeper understanding of it. The skill wasn't just about enhancing items, it was about rewriting their fundamental properties, bending reality to his will. But the AI's warning echoed in his mind, crafting such a seed may require a cost beyond materials. He'd pushed the thought aside, focusing on the gathering. With Grint's network of traders and the quarry workers' newfound enthusiasm, armed with his upgraded tools, they'd become efficient miners. He'd amassed everything the ancient texts in the ruins described. Yet, as he laid out the components, a cold dread settled in his stomach. The materials formed a circle on a flat stone table he'd upgraded into a sanctified crafting altar. At its center lay a small, dull seed pod, no larger than his thumb, that Grint had produced from a hidden cache. This is the base, Grint had explained. A fossilized seed from the tower's founding era. Useless on its own, but with your skill. Alex nodded, his mind racing. He'd spent hours meditating, visualizing the process. The seed needed to grow across floors, connecting them not just physically but economically and spiritually, stabilizing the imbalances he'd exposed. It was a tall order, and the risk of failure gnawed at him. If he messed this up, the core AI would delete him, and Vex enforcers would crush the first floor. He took a deep breath, his hands trembling slightly. "Let's begin," he said, more to himself than to Grint. The old shopkeeper stepped back, giving him space. Alex closed his eyes, reaching inward to the skill. "Absolute upgrade," responded, a warm glow enveloping his hands. He started with the ores, picking up a chunk of mithril ore from floor 5. With a thought, he activated the skill. The ore shimmered, its metallic surface flowing like liquid as it purified, becoming pure mithril essence. He placed it beside the seed, repeating the process with each material. Glowing moss became life force spores, crystalline shards transformed into harmony crystals, and the starlight essence condensed into a tiny, brilliant star that hovered above the altar. The air grew thick with power, crackling with energy. Alex's muscles ached, each upgrade drained him, not just of stamina but of something deeper, a vital spark he couldn't name. He pushed through, sweat dripping into his eyes. As he fused the components, weaving them into the seed with intricate mental commands, a system notification flashed in his vision, visible only to him. "Warning, skill strain detected. Proceeding may cause permanent damage to absolute upgrade. Sacrifice required for mythic tier creation." His heart skipped a beat. So it was true, the cost wasn't just effort. He paused, hands hovering over the glowing seed. It had begun to pulse with a soft, green light, tiny roots already sprouting from its surface. But it felt incomplete, like a song missing its final note. He glanced at Grint, who watched with a furrowed brow. "What's wrong?" Grint asked, sensing his hesitation. "The system, it's asking for a sacrifice," Alex whispered, his voice tight. "My skill might be damaged. Permanently." Grint's eyes widened. "That's a fool's bargain, Alex. Without that skill, you're just a common blacksmith again. All this," he gestured to the bustling quarry, the workers trading enhanced tools, the growing sense of community, "it collapses." Alex knew he was right. Absolute upgrade had given him purpose, power, a way to fight back against a system that had branded him a failure. Losing it would mean returning to the despair of those first days in the quarry. But he thought of the trial, of the core AI's challenge. This seed could change everything, not just for him but for all the trapped souls on the lower floors. It could bring balance, fairness. He remembered the sneers of the climbers, the arrogance of Kale, the cold efficiency of Vex. This was his chance to prove that his skill wasn't a curse but a gift. "I have to try," Alex said, his resolve hardening. "If I don't, the AI will delete me anyway. And this seed, it's worth the risk." Grint sighed, a sound of resignation. "Stubborn as the rock you mine. Do what you must, but be quick. The energy here is drawing attention." Alex nodded, turning back to the seed. He placed his hands on it, feeling its warmth seep into his skin. This time, he didn't just activate absolute upgrade, he poured everything into it, his memories of failure, his hope for revenge, his newfound purpose. He visualized the seed growing, its roots burrowing through floors, its branches offering shelter and resources to all. As he did, a sharp pain lanced through his mind, like a crack forming in glass. The system notification blared, "Sacrifice accepted. Absolute upgrade, stability reduced by 40%. Proceed." He gritted his teeth, ignoring the warning. "Yes," he muttered, pushing more energy. The seed glowed brighter, the light intensifying until it was blinding. The materials around it dissolved into streams of color, flowing into the seed. The pure mithril essence became veins of metal in its shell, the life force spores infused it with growth potential, the harmony crystals aligned its energy with the tower's floors, and the hovering star settled at its core, a miniature sun. The pain in Alex's head worsened, a throbbing ache that made his vision blur. He felt a part of his skill tear away, like a limb being severed. A new notification, absolute upgrade, permanently impaired. Efficiency reduced. High-tier upgrades now require exponentially more effort. But he didn't stop. With a final, desperate push, he fused it all. The seed erupted in a burst of light, so powerful that the ground shook. Alex staggered back, collapsing to his knees. The seed hovered above the altar, now a perfect sphere of swirling greens, golds, and silvers, pulsing with a rhythm that matched the tower's heartbeat. It was done, the world tree seed, mythic grade, capable of growing across floors. Grint rushed forward, helping Alex up. "You did it, boy. Look." The seed drifted downward, planting itself in the soil Alex had prepared. Immediately, tiny shoots burst forth, growing at an impossible rate. Within seconds, a sapling stood waist-high, its leaves shimmering with dew that glowed like liquid light. The air filled with a fresh, sweet scent, and the quarry workers paused their labor, staring in awe. Even the artificial sky seemed to brighten. Alex smiled weakly, leaning on Grint. The sacrifice had been worth it. His skill felt different, sluggish, like trying to run through mud, but the seed was alive. He could feel its connection to the tower, a gentle hum of potential. "It's working," he breathed, relief washing over him. But then, a shadow fell across the clearing. A portal ripped open in the air, its edges crackling with violent energy. From it stepped Commander Vex, his enforcer armor gleaming with system runes. Behind him, a squad of enforcers fanned out, weapons drawn. Vex's face was a mask of cold calculation, but his eyes burned with greed as they fixed on the growing sapling. "Alex," Vex said, his voice smooth and deadly. "I must commend you. The core AI informed me of your success. A world tree seed, such a thing could unite the tower, bring order to the chaos you've caused." Alex straightened, pushing away from Grint. "The deal was struck, Vex. The AI spared me. This seed is for everyone." Vex laughed, a harsh sound that echoed off the rocks. "Foolish boy. Did you really think we'd let a broken skill like yours dictate the tower's future? The AI is naive. This seed, with it, I could control the flow of resources, command every floor. No more climbing, no more struggle. Absolute power." He stepped forward, a hand outstretched toward the sapling. "I'll be taking it now. Consider this a betrayal, if you like. I prefer to call it efficiency." Alex's heart pounded. He tried to activate absolute upgrade to enhance the ground or create a barrier, but the skill responded sluggishly, the pain in his head flaring. He'd sacrificed too much. Vex enforcers advanced, their weapons humming with energy designed to counter upgrades. The sapling, sensing danger, trembled, its leaves rustling as if in warning. Grint moved to stand beside Alex, his old body tense. "Vex, you snake. The core AI will be too late," Vex interrupted, smiling. "By the time it intervenes, the seed will be mine, and I'll have reshaped the tower in my image." He lunged for the sapling, his fingers inches from its glowing trunk. Alex acted on instinct, throwing himself between Vex and the tree. He had no weapon, no grand upgrade ready. All he had was the seed's warmth at his back and the fading echo of his skill. As Vex's hand closed around his arm, the sapling surged with light, its roots digging deeper, as if drawing strength from Alex's sacrifice. The cliffhanger hung in the air, Vex's betrayal had begun, and the seed's fate, and Alex's, teetered on the edge of a blade. The world tree seed pulsed with a light that seemed to breathe, its soft glow illuminating the quarry with an ethereal warmth that felt alien to this place of toil and dust. Alex stood before it, his hands still tingling from the crafting process, the system notification about his skill's 40% reduction flashing in his mind like a persistent wound. He could feel the difference, a sluggishness in his thoughts when he tried to access absolute upgrade, as if the skill itself were groaning under the strain of the sacrifice. But the seed was alive, a tiny sprout unfurling from its core, tendrils of green energy weaving through the air like threads of hope. Then Commander Vex stepped forward, his enforcers fanning out behind him in a semicircle of gleaming armor that reflected the seed's light in cold, metallic shards. Vex's face, usually a mask of bureaucratic detachment, was now twisted with a hunger that made Alex's blood run cold. The commander's eyes were fixed on the sprouting seed, his fingers twitching toward the hilt of his reality-warping blade. "You've outdone yourself, Alex," Vex said, his voice a low, resonant growl that echoed off the quarry walls. "A world tree seed, something even the core AI thought impossible. But you've made one critical error, you believed in their deal." He took another step, the ground crunching under his boots. "The tower's administrators don't want balance. They want control. And this seed, it's the key to controlling everything. With it, I can reshape the floors, dictate the flow of resources, and ensure that power remains where it belongs, with those who deserve it." Alex's mind raced, the impaired skill humming weakly in his consciousness. He glanced at old man Grint, who stood nearby, his face pale but resolute. The shopkeeper had warned him about Vex's ambitions, but seeing it unfold was another thing entirely. "You're betraying the core AI's directive," Alex said, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. "The seed was meant to benefit all floors, not become a weapon. Vex laughed, a harsh, grating sound. Directives change. Reality is what we make it. And right now, I'm making it mine. He gestured, and the enforcers raised their weapons, crackling energy lances that distorted the air around them. Take the seed. Eliminate anyone who resists. As the enforcers advanced, Alex acted on instinct. He reached out with absolute upgrade, the skill responding sluggishly, like a muscle torn and healing. He focused not on the seed itself, but on the growing tree, the tiny sprout that was already weaving roots into the quarry's stone floor. In his mind, he visualized an enhancement, not just a plant, but a guardian. The system flared to life, a notification blinking in his vision, upgrade target, world tree sprout. Proposed enhancement, divine guardian, imbues sentience and defensive capabilities. Cost, high mana drain, risk of skill backlash. He didn't hesitate. Do it, he whispered, pouring his will into the upgrade. The air shuddered. The sprout erupted in a burst of golden light, its form expanding rapidly, bark hardening into plates of shimmering armor, leaves sharpening into blades of emerald energy. In moments, it stood 20 feet tall, a majestic tree with eyes of glowing sap that scanned the quarry with ancient intelligence. Branches swept down, forming a protective canopy over Alex and the workers who had gathered, their faces a mix of awe and fear. What have you done? Vex snarled, his composure cracking. That's not in the system's parameters. I'm full of surprises, Alex gasped, sweat beading on his forehead as the skill's backlash hit him, a sharp pain behind his eyes, like a vice tightening. But the Divine Guardian was active, its roots coiling defensively around the first floor. Vex recovered quickly, barking orders. Focus fire on the tree. It's just an upgrade, break it, and the seed is ours. The enforcers unleashed their lances, beams of distorted reality slamming into the Guardian's bark. The tree shuddered, but held, its leaves releasing a shower of healing pollen that mended minor cracks. Alex could feel its pain through the skill link, a dull ache that mirrored his own. He needed to fight back, but with his skill impaired, direct upgrades were risky. Instead, he turned to the environment. Stumbling to a pile of discarded ore, he placed a hand on a chunk of iron. Upgrade, living golem, he commanded, the words feeling heavy on his tongue. The ore shifted, morphing into a hulking figure of metal that lurched toward the enforcers, swinging fists like hammers. It wasn't as refined as his earlier creations, the 40% reduction showed in its jerky movements, but it bought time. Vex ignored the golem, his eyes locked on Alex. You're weakening. I can see it in your stance. He drew his blade, the weapon humming with a frequency that made Alex's teeth ache. This ends now. He charged, moving with unnatural speed, his blade aimed for Alex's heart. Alex dodged, but not fast enough. The blade grazed his arm, and a searing pain erupted, not just physical, but a corruption that tried to unravel his connection to absolute upgrade. He cried out, falling to one knee. The Divine Guardian roared, a sound like grinding stone, and lashed out with a branch, forcing Vex back. Pathetic, Vex spat. You rely on toys, but I have the system's authority. My blade can cut through any upgrade. He advanced again, his enforcers regrouping to pin down the Guardian and Golem. In that moment, Alex's mind cleared. He remembered Grint's words from earlier, the tower's foundation is its floors. Upgrade what's fundamental, and you change everything. He looked at the ground, at the roots of the Divine Guardian, digging deep into the quarry. An idea sparked, desperate, but brilliant. If he couldn't upgrade Vex directly, he could upgrade what bound him here. With a final surge of will, Alex pushed past the pain and the skill's impairment. He focused on the tree's roots, feeling them spread through the first floor like veins. Absolute upgrade, enhance roots to, binding vines of order, he thought, pouring every ounce of his remaining mana into the command. The system screamed in protest, warnings flashing, skill efficiency critically low. Risk of permanent damage, 80%. Proceed. Yes, Alex gritted out. The roots glowed with a silver light, multiplying and thickening, surging from the ground like serpents. They wrapped around Vex's legs before he could react, coiling up his body with impossible strength. He struggled, his blade hacking at them, but for every vine he cut, two more grew, infused with Alex's unwavering intent. You can't do this. Vex shouted, his voice muffled by the encroaching roots. The system won't allow it. The system is learning, Alex said, his voice weak but firm. He collapsed to the ground, the skill's backlash hitting him full force, a blinding headache, and a chilling numbness in his hands where the upgrade energy had flowed. But he watched as the roots bound Vex completely, lifting him off the ground in a cocoon of living wood. The enforcers faltered, their leader immobilized, and the divine guardian let out a low, approving hum. Silence fell over the quarry, broken only by the soft rustle of the tree's leaves. The workers stared, their weapons lowered. Grint hurried to Alex's side, helping him sit up. "You did it, lad," the old man murmured. "But at what cost?" Alex didn't answer. He could feel absolute upgrade flickering in his mind, like a dying ember. The 40% reduction had deepened, and he wasn't sure if it would ever recover fully. But as he looked at Vex, trapped and helpless, and at the divine guardian, standing tall, its energy already spreading through the first floor in waves of revitalizing warmth, he knew it was worth it. The seed's growth accelerated, tiny leaves unfurling to brush against the quarry's ceiling, and a sense of peace settled over the area. Then, the air crackled. A portal of pure light tore open above them, and a voice echoed, devoid of emotion yet heavy with authority. "Cease all actions. The core AI has observed the conflict. Judgment is now required." The light intensified, washing over Alex, Vex, and the entire scene. Alex held his breath, his fate hanging in the balance as the core AI prepared to decide whether his rebellion had saved the tower or doomed it. The silence that followed the core AI's announcement was absolute, broken only by the faint hum of the world tree's energy and the ragged breathing of those gathered on the first floor. Alex stood before the shimmering projection of the tower's central intelligence, his body aching from the battle, his mind reeling from the strain of using his impaired skill. Around him, the quarry bore the scars of conflict, cracked earth, shattered rocks, and the still forms of defeated enforcers, now bound by the glowing roots of the divine guardian. The core AI manifested as a sphere of shifting light, hovering above the world tree's nascent canopy. Its voice echoed not through the air, but directly into the minds of all present, a calm, resonant tone that carried the weight of eons. "Alex, bearer of the absolute upgrade skill," it began, "your actions have been assessed. The data is conclusive." Alex swallowed hard, his hands trembling slightly. He glanced at old man Grint, who stood nearby with a hopeful expression, and at the quarry workers who had fought beside him, their faces etched with exhaustion and anticipation. The lockdown still held the first floor in a shimmering barrier, trapping them all in this moment of judgment. He braced himself, expecting condemnation. After all, he had broken the tower's fundamental rules, disrupted its economy, and nearly caused a system-wide collapse. But the AI's next word surprised him. The absolute upgrade skill was sealed not because it was inherently destructive, but because its previous wielders sought to dominate reality for personal gain. They twisted its potential into a tool of control, destabilizing the tower's balance. You, however, have used it differently. The projection shifted, displaying holographic images of Alex's journey, the first upgraded pickaxe, the mass-produced tools sold through Grint's shop, the battle with Kale's guild, the creation of the world tree seed. You enhanced discarded items to empower the weak. You defended this floor against unjust aggression. You crafted the world tree seed not for domination, but to propose a solution, a living system that could grow across floors, distributing energy and resources equitably. Your intent was restorative, not destructive. Alex felt a surge of relief, but it was tempered by caution. "So, what now?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "Will you delete my skill? Or me?" The AI's light pulsed softly. "Deletion is unnecessary. The tower adapts. Your actions have exposed flaws in the current economic structure, a system rigged to favor climbers at the expense of laborers like those on this floor. This imbalance has persisted for centuries, leading to stagnation and conflict. You have demonstrated a better way." With a wave of light, the lockdown barrier dissolved. The shimmering wall that had sealed the first floor vanished, and the familiar sounds of the quarry, the distant clang of tools, the murmur of workers, returned. A collective gasp rose from the crowd as they realized they were free. The enforcers, still bound by the tree's roots, looked on in stunned silence, while Commander Vex struggled futilely against his bindings, his face a mask of fury. "I offer you a new role," the AI continued. "Alex, you will become the tower's official crafter liaison. Your responsibilities will include overseeing the fair distribution of resources across all floors, mentoring other crafters, and using your absolute upgrade skill, now reinstated with full functionality, to address systemic imbalances. In return, you will have the tower's support and protection." Alex's mind raced. This was more than he had ever dreamed of, not just freedom, but purpose. He thought of the years he'd spent as a failed blacksmith, mocked and discarded. Now, he could reshape the very world that had rejected him. But he knew better than to accept blindly. What about the others? He gestured to the quarry workers. They've been exploited for too long. And what about Vex and his enforcers? The AI's response was immediate. The first floor will be restructured. No longer a mere quarry for manual labor, it will become a hub for crafting and trade, with fair wages and opportunities for advancement. The workers here will have access to training and resources previously reserved for higher floors. As for Commander Vex, the projection focused on the bound enforcer. His actions were driven by a desire for control, violating tower protocols. He will be stripped of his authority and reassigned to rehabilitation duties. His enforcers will undergo retraining. Vex snarled, "You can't do this. I served the tower for decades." "Service without integrity is meaningless," the AI replied, its tone final. "The tower values balance above all. Alex has shown that balance is possible through creation, not coercion." Alex took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the decision. He looked at Grint, who gave a slow, encouraging nod. The old shopkeeper had been more than a distributor, he'd been a guide, revealing the truth about the tower's corruption. "I accept," Alex said, his voice firming. "But on one condition, I want Grint as my advisor. He understands the tower's underbelly better than anyone." The AI's light brightened. "Agreed. Old Man Grint, formerly Administrator Grintel, will be reinstated with limited privileges to assist in the transition." Grint chuckled, a sound of genuine relief. "About time they acknowledged my expertise. I've been stuck in this shop for too long." Over the next weeks, the first floor transformed. Alex, now the crafter liaison, worked tirelessly. With his skill fully restored, he upgraded the quarry's infrastructure, turning simple forges into eternal flame anvils that never cooled, and/or carts into self-propelled haulers that moved with a thought. He held workshops, teaching the workers basic enhancement techniques, though none could match his absolute upgrade. The economy began to stabilize, traders from higher floors flocked to the new hub, eager to acquire Alex's legendary crafts, but now under regulated terms that prevented inflation. One afternoon, Alex stood before the world tree, which had grown to tower over the quarry, its branches shimmering with energy that seeped into the earth, enriching the ore veins. He placed a hand on its bark, feeling the pulse of life within. "You've become more than a seed," he murmured. "You're a symbol." Grint approached, carrying a ledger. "The numbers are looking good, Alex. Trade has increased by 300%, and the workers' living standards have improved dramatically. Even the climbers from higher floors are starting to respect this place, no more bullying." Alex smiled, but a shadow crossed his mind. "It's almost too peaceful. After everything that happened, I keep waiting for the next crisis." "That's the burden of power," Grint said sagely. "But enjoy the calm while it lasts. The tower has a way of testing its legends." As the days passed, Alex's reputation spread. Stories of the crafter liaison who turned trash into treasure, who defended the weak and reformed the system, became myths told in taverns across the floors. He received requests from crafters seeking guidance, and even from administrators asking for help with stubborn system errors. In one notable instance, he upgraded a broken communication relay between floors 10 and 11, restoring contact that had been lost for years. But amidst the success, Alex never forgot his roots. He often spent evenings in the quarry, chatting with the workers who had become his friends. One such evening, as the twin moons of the tower rose, a young worker named Lena asked, "Alex, do you ever miss the old days? When it was just you and that rusty pickaxe?" He laughed, leaning against an upgraded anvil. "Sometimes. It was simpler. But I don't regret the change. We've built something better here." As he spoke, a sudden chill swept through the quarry. The world tree's leaves rustled unnaturally, and a notification flashed in Alex's vision, a system alert he hadn't seen before, marked with a crimson sigil from the highest floor, floor 100. It read, "Anomaly detected, absolute upgrade user. Power source identified. Interest declared." Alex's blood ran cold. He shared a look with Grint, whose face had paled. "What is this?" Alex asked, his voice tight. Grint scanned the alert, his hands trembling. "Floor 100. It's the pinnacle of the tower, shrouded in mystery. No one has reached it in living memory. They say it's where the tower's creators reside, or perhaps something else. This sigil, it's not from the core AI. It's external, aggressive. Before Alex could respond, the ground trembled. A fissure opened near the world tree, and from it emerged a figure clad in obsidian armor, wreathed in shadows that seemed to drink the light. The figure stood tall, its presence oppressive, and spoke with a voice that grated like grinding stone. Alex, crafter liaison. Your power intrigues us. The absolute upgrade skill was meant to be erased from existence. Yet here you are, wielding it with the tower's blessing. A mistake we intend to correct. The quarry workers scattered, fear in their eyes. Alex stepped forward, his mind racing. He had just found peace, just begun his new role, and now this. Who are you? He demanded, his hand instinctively reaching for the God-forged armor he wore. The figure laughed, a sound devoid of warmth. We are the keepers of the final threshold. We have watched your disruptions from above. Your reforms weaken the tower's natural order, a order that favors the strong. Your skill is a cancer, and we have come to excise it. Surrender the world tree in your knowledge of absolute upgrade, or we will reduce this floor to dust. Alex felt a surge of defiance. He had faced bullies, enforcers, and system judgments. He wouldn't back down now. I've fought for this floor before. I'll do it again. Grint grabbed his arm. Alex, be careful. This isn't like Vex. These beings, they're from beyond the tower's normal governance. The core AI may not be able to protect you here. The figure raised a hand, and shadows coalesced into a blade of pure void. Then let this be your final lesson. The tower's true masters have awakened, and they do not share your sentimentality. As the shadow blade descended, Alex activated his skill, focusing on the world tree. He could feel its energy, a reservoir of potential. With a thought, he began an upgrade, not on an item, but on the very concept of defense. The tree's bark glowed with golden light, and roots erupted from the ground, forming a shield between him and the attacker. The clash echoed through the quarry, a sound of tearing reality. Alex knew this was only the beginning. The peace he had built was shattered, and a new threat loomed, one that sought not just to control the tower, but to erase the very changes he had fought for. As he stood firm, the crafter liaison realized his legend was far from over, it was entering a darker, more dangerous chapter.